Chapter 627. Lu Yen County. At this moment, the city gates of the imperial capital were tightly shut. The ancient griffins on both sides of the city gates stared coldly at Lu Hantian and the other geniuses from Muqin County. Feeling the chilling gaze of the ancient griffins, most of the geniuses standing behind Zhuowen lowered their heads subconsciously, not daring to look at the two ancient griffins. Even Qin Batian and Ling Wushuang couldn't hold on for long and lowered their heads as well. Apart from Lu Hantian and Lu Nantian, only Elvitao, Tuan, Luo Xing and Qin Lian didn't lower their heads. These ancient griffins are indeed worthy of having an ancient bloodline. Just their gaze alone has the ability to intimidate one's mind. Zhuan was secretly shocked by the terror of the ancient griffins when he felt the people behind him lowering their heads. "Father, why aren't the gates of the imperial capital open?" Elvitao furrowed his brows and asked. The imperial capital is an important place in the Qin Xian Empire. It is heavily guarded and is not a place where anyone can enter. Furthermore, this is related to the Battle of the Nine Counties and there will definitely be more people entering. The imperial capital will naturally be heavily guarded. Lu Nantian explained with a smile. After Lu Nantian said this, Zhuowen and the others nodded their heads. After all, the Battle of the Nine Counties was a grand event of the Qin Xian Empire, and such a grand event would definitely attract countless cultivators. It was inevitable that there would be crooks mixed in with the honest folk. Therefore, it was reasonable for the imperial capital to be heavily guarded. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, a group of figures broke through the air and arrived at the open space outside the city gate in an instant. The number of people in this group was similar to Zhuowen's group. There were close to 100 people, and they were all quite young. In front of this group of people stood an old man in a white robe. This elder's eyes were as bright as the starry sky. When he opened and closed his eyes, there would always be a burst of light that made it difficult for others to look directly at him. Furthermore, the aura that was faintly emitted from his body was like a 10,000 zhang tall mountain. This elder wasn't simple. "Oh, so it's Brother Nantian. How have you been? I haven't seen you for many years and your strength has improved a lot. You are actually catching up to this old man." After the group of people stabilized themselves, the elder instantly saw Lu Nantian and laughed. He immediately walked over to Lu Nantian and patted Lu Nantian's shoulder as they were very familiar with each other. "So it's Brother Qiu. I didn't expect you to arrive so early. Looks like you've made ample preparations." LV Nantian also revealed a slight smile as he replied. "This person is Qiu Changxing, the county lord of Luyan County, which is adjacent to Qin County. He is slightly stronger than Marquis Lu and is at the mid-stage Mystique Venerable realm. His nickname is Mystique Venerable Luyan," Luo Xing explained to Zhuowen in a low voice, as if he saw the confusion on Zhuowen's face. "The county lord of Luyan County?" Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded his head. Qin Xian Empire had 9 counties, and Zhuowen had naturally heard of them. This Lu Yen County was to the left of Muqin County, and the borders of the two counties were close to each other. In the last War of the Nine Counties, because Lu Hantian was absent, Muqin County was ranked second to last among the 9 counties, and Lu Yen County was ranked first from the bottom. Perhaps because their rankings were close, the relationship between Lu Yen Xian Venerate Qiu Changxing and Muqin Xian Venerate Lu Nantian was quite good. This was why Qiu Changxing was so enthusiastic when he saw Lu Nantian. "Brother Nanan, don't make fun of me. In the last Great War of the Nine Counties, it's not like you don't know that our Lu Yen County was ranked last, so how could we be fully prepared?" Speaking up to here, Qiu Changxing's gaze suddenly fell on the shabbily dressed Lu Hantian beside Lu Nantan, and he asked doubtfully, "Brother Nanan, who is this?" Qiu Changxing knew that someone who could stand side by side with a powerhouse like Lu Nantian was definitely not a nobody, so he asked this question. This is my big brother, Lu Hantian. My big brother came out from the blood demon inheritance, so I'm sure you've heard about him." Lu Nantian smiled and introduced him to Qiu Changxing quite enthusiastically. Lu Hantian really came out from the blood demon inheritance? When I first heard this news, I wasn't sure, but now it seems that this news is true. Qiu Changxing was stunned at first, but soon a respectful look appeared on his face. He cupped his hands towards Lu Hantian and said, Changxing has always admired Brother Hantian. Now that I've met you in person, it is indeed true that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Hearing Qiu Changxing's flattering words, Lu Hantian chuckled and pretended to be a lonely master. He pretended to be profound and said, You are too polite. Although I am handsome and elegant, and everyone loves me and flowers bloom when they see me, I usually keep a low profile. Even if I keep a low profile, I was still recognized by you. It seems that one can't be too famous. Lu Hantian, this cheap bastard, bragging to the heavens. As soon as these words came out, Qiu Changxing was stunned and a strange feeling rose in his heart. This Lu Hantian in front of him seemed to be a little crazy. However, he naturally wouldn't say this out loud. He just smiled awkwardly and chatted with Lu Nantian for a while before returning to the Lu Yen County team and silently waiting for the city gate to open. Zhuan narrowed his eyes. He found that the auras of the nearly 100 geniuses in the Lu Yen County team were clearly weaker than those of the Muqing County team. Standing at the front of the Lu Yen County team was a young man about the same age as Lu Yitao. This young man had slender limbs and delicate features. He wore a white robe and had a calm and gentle demeanor. At first glance, he looked like a scholar, but Zhuan found that this young man's aura was much stronger than the others in the team. Moreover, the other geniuses in the Lu Yen County team looked at this young man with reverence in their eyes. Lu Yen County's number 1 genius, Qiu Shaoyun. This person is proficient in palm techniques and has cultivated the transcendent emperor-grade armor skill, Falling Sun Palm. He is very strong and is ranked 32nd on the Azure Emperor list. He is slightly weaker than me, Luo Xing whispered. Zhuan nodded slightly. The strength of the Lu Yen County was indeed much weaker than the Muqing County. The number 1 genius of the Lu Yen County, Qiu Shaoyun, was even weaker than Luo Xing. It was no wonder that the Lu Yen County ranked last in the previous battle of the 9 counties. Long. Lu Nantian and the others didn't have to wait for long. On both sides of the 10,000-foot-tall city gate, 2 huge ancient griffins roared as if they had received an order. They grabbed the chains on their bodies and began to slowly pull them. The sound of gears turning constantly echoed. Under the pull of the ancient griffins, the 10,000-foot-tall city gate slowly opened from the center to the 2 sides. The sound of horse hooves suddenly came from within the city gate. Soon after, Yun saw a group of armored cultivators riding large horses covered in scales. They rushed out of the city like lightning and arrived in front of the 2 teams in an instant. Even their mounts are draconic horses with ancient bloodlines. This imperial capital is indeed extraordinary. Zhuo Wen's pupils constricted as he muttered to himself when he saw the large horse covered in scales that the group was sitting on. Greetings, Lord Imperial Guard Commander. After this group of people arrived, Lu Nantian and Qiu Changxing both bowed respectfully. This group was the Imperial Guard Army of the imperial capital. They were responsible for the safety of the entire imperial capital. The members of this army were all Ultimate Emperor realm experts and above. At the very front of the Imperial Guard Army was a burly man who was nearly 2 meters tall and had bulging muscles. This person was the commander of the Imperial Guard Army. His strength was unfathomable, and he was even stronger than Lu Nantian and Qiu Changxing. He was at least at the sovereign realm. The Imperial Guard commander nodded and said in a clear voice, "Report the origins of your 2 teams. After I confirm it, I will let you in." Lu Nantian and Qiu Changxing were quite familiar with this situation. They hurriedly took out a jade talisman and slowly handed it to the Imperial Guard commander. The Imperial Guard commander took the 2 jade talismans and took out a bronze mirror from his spirit ring. He then crushed the jade talisman in his hand and lines of small words appeared on the surface of the bronze mirror. Muqing County and Lu Yen County? It seems that there is no problem with your origins. You can enter the imperial capital. The Imperial Guard commander nodded and waved his hand. The numerous Imperial Guards behind him lined up neatly on both sides and opened up a path. Your 2 counties should be preparing for the War of the 9 Counties in a month, right? Come with me. I will take you to the resting area. The Imperial Guard commander stared indifferently at Lu Nantian and the others. He directly controlled the dragon horse under his feet and moved forward along the path on both sides. Lu Nantian and the others naturally followed closely behind. The entire geographical location of the imperial capital was within a city. Moreover, it was a city that was hundreds of times larger than a county. Just the city gate alone was tens of thousands of feet tall, which was enough to show how magnificent and terrifying the imperial capital was. After entering the city gate, Zhuowen and the others were presented with a grand street. The street was dozens of feet wide and there were many stalls on both sides of the street. People were coming and going, and it was very lively. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that most of the people walking on the streets of the imperial city had extremely powerful auras. Moreover, the vendors on both sides of the street weren't ordinary vendors either. All of them were actually martial artists with powerful auras. The vendors were actually selling armor skills, spirit medicines, and other things that martial artists needed. The imperial capital is different from other cities. There are basically no civilians in the imperial capital. Everyone in the imperial capital is a warrior, and they are not weak warriors. After all, the imperial capital is where Emperor Qing resides. There are too many people who want to enter the imperial capital. In addition to the rules of the imperial capital, warriors who are not strong enough are not allowed to enter, Luo Xing explained faintly. Hearing this, Zhuowen was relieved. That's right, the entire Qingxian Empire was so vast, and there were countless cultivators, but there was only one city in the imperial capital. Which cultivator didn't want to enter the imperial capital, or even settle down there? After all, the imperial capital also meant hope and opportunities. There were many powerhouses in the imperial capital. In addition, Emperor Qing was in the imperial capital. Naturally, there were many opportunities in the imperial capital. If an ordinary warrior encountered an opportunity, he could definitely achieve a meteoric rise. Chapter 628. Commander of the Imperial Guard. It's the commander of the Imperial Guard. Quickly make way, don't block the commander's path. After the commander of the Imperial Guard entered the city gates, he immediately attracted the attention of many cultivators on the street. These cultivators all retreated to the sides with reverence in their eyes, making way for the commander of the Imperial Guard. On both sides of the street, many cultivators curiously looked at the many geniuses from Lu Yan County and Muqing County behind the commander of the Imperial Guard. They knew that these two teams should be from 2 of the 9 counties. They should have come to the imperial capital to participate in the War of the 9 counties. It seems that the Imperial Guard has quite a high prestige in the imperial capital. Zhuowen was rather surprised when he sensed the reverence in the eyes of the cultivators around him. He could sense quite a few powerful cultivators among this group of cultivators. They should be at least ultimate 9th Wheel Emperor Realm cultivators. Even such masters could consciously make way for them, and even show such reverence in their eyes. It was obvious that the Imperial Guard had a great reputation in the imperial capital. Of course, the Imperial Guard is a powerful army personally raised by Emperor Qing. Although there aren't many of them, they are all elites. Usually, the Imperial Guard represents the will of Emperor Qing himself. How could these cultivators not respect them? Elvitao turned around and explained softly. Personally raised by Emperor Qing? That explains it. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. He knew that if the Imperial Guard was really raised by Emperor Qing, it would be normal for them to have such a reputation in the imperial capital. Dang dang dang. The crisp sound of horse hooves slowly sounded on the street. The commander of the Imperial Guard rode on a tall dragon horse. Under the reverent gazes of countless cultivators, he led the 2 teams from Lu Yan County and Muqing County into the depths of the imperial capital. The imperial capital was vast and endless. In the center of the imperial capital, there was a terrifying palace that looked like a giant beast. Just this palace alone occupied a quarter of the imperial capital. The exterior of the palace was resplendent and magnificent. Above the palace, countless auras surged and converged, faintly forming a terrifying gigantic dragon. This was the manifestation of a grand momentum, the convergence of monarch Qi. This huge and magnificent palace was the imperial capital. It was where the imperial family, the strongest power in the imperial capital, resided. In the imperial capital, the only emperor of the Qing Xian dynasty, Emperor Qing, was overseeing the imperial capital. Feeling the terrifying aura above the imperial capital, Yuan couldn't help but turn pale. This aura was too powerful, Yuan felt powerless to resist it. Is this the terror of an emperor realm master? Just the aura that flowed out was enough to intimidate me, Zhuowen muttered with a shocked expression. The faces of the other geniuses in the team weren't any better. When they first came into contact with the emperor's aura above the imperial capital, they more or less felt a sense of awe and discomfort. However, this discomfort didn't last long. The commander of the Imperial Guard, who was walking at the front, waved his right hand and a green light sprinkled over everyone behind him. Suddenly, the discomfort disappeared. Don't stare at the dragon aura above the imperial capital. That's the emperor's aura of His Majesty Emperor Qing. Your cultivation is too low. If you're not careful, I'm afraid you'll suffer internal injuries. By then it'll be too late to regret. The commander of the Imperial Guard said coldly. Hearing this, everyone in the team hurriedly lowered their heads and no longer dared to look at the dragon-shaped aura above the imperial capital. At the same time, they were shocked by the strength of Emperor Qing. Just the aura alone was enough to make them feel oppressed. If they were to face Emperor Qing in person, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? The commander of the Imperial Guard didn't lead the two teams into the imperial capital. Instead, he stopped at a square about a kilometer away from the imperial capital. The square was extremely large and there were tadpole-shaped runes on the ground. These runes revealed traces of a strange aura. This is the Realm Suppression Formation. It's the only transmission point to the imperial capital. The Battle of the Nine Counties will begin in a month, so the Realm Suppression Formation won't be opened until a month later. Today, I brought you here just to let you familiarize yourself with the Realm Suppression Formation. During this 1 month, we won't restrict your movements in the imperial capital. Moreover, you'll have to find your own accommodation. 1 month later, come to the Realm Suppression Formation on time. At that time, you'll be transported into the imperial capital. Remember, the time limit is 1 month. This Battle of the Nine Counties is very important. It's personally presided over by the Qing Emperor. The commander of the Imperial Guard glanced at the people around him coldly. Finally, his eyes stopped at the front of the team from Muqing County, where the extremely sloppy Lu Hantian was. He actually felt a threatening aura from this person. He didn't notice it earlier, but now that he looked carefully, he realized that this sloppy old beggar's aura was faintly leaking out. It actually made him a little scared. At this moment, Lu Hantian picked his nose. He also noticed the gaze of the commander of the Imperial Guard. He hurriedly made a pose and revealed a lonely expression. He sighed softly and said, "People who are too handsome are like this. Even if they want to keep a low profile, they will inadvertently attract the attention and admiration of others." When Lu Hantian's words came out, the expressionless commander of the Imperial Guard's face suddenly twitched. How could this guy be so narcissistic? How strong was his heart to be able to say that he was handsome every time he opened his mouth? In Muqing County's team, many geniuses covered their faces in shame and didn't dare to look at Lu Hantian. Their expressions were as if they didn't know this guy. This Lu Hantian was too embarrassing for Muqing County. He actually dared to brag in front of the commander of the Imperial Guard. As for the people from Luoyang County, they all looked at the old beggar who was still posing with a strange expression. Their expressions weren't any better. The commander of the Imperial Guard shook his head and didn't pay any more attention to Lu Hantian. Instead, he gave a few more instructions about the Realm Suppression Formation before he patted his horse's belly and disappeared with the rest of the Imperial Guard. Nantian, Hantian, my two brothers. This old master will first take these little guys to find a place to stay. Why don't you two come with me? At that time, we can take care of each other. Qiu Changxing said with a smile. Qiu Changxing's eyes flashed. He was very clear that their Luoyang County was ranked at the bottom of the 9 great counties. However, Muqing County was different. Although Muqing County was ranked at the bottom in the last tournament, that was because Lu Hantian wasn't there. Qiu Changxing was very clear that if Lu Hantian had also participated in the 9 counties war, Muqin County's ranking would definitely be at the top. Now that Muqin County had Lu Hantian, Qiu Changxing knew that the rise of Muqin County should be inevitable. Therefore, he naturally wanted to get closer to them. Hearing this, Lu Nantian nodded and immediately looked at Lu Hantian. After all, Lu Hantian was the leader this time. This matter naturally had to be approved by Lu Hantian. Lu Hantian nodded and said, "Old man Qiu is very experienced. I'm afraid that he has been to the imperial capital many times. Following him is a good choice." Hearing this, Qiu Changxing's face immediately lit up with joy. He turned his head and said to the elegant-looking Qiu Xiaoyan behind him, "Xiaoyan, you lead the team and walk together with Muqin Marquis team. We need to find a place to stay together." Hearing this, Qiu Xiaoyan nodded his head. How could he not understand Qiu Changxing's meaning? He also knew that Muqin County was not ordinary, especially the 6 people standing at the front. The aura emitted from each of them made him somewhat fearful. Especially the white-robed Lu Yitao, the cold-looking Luo Xing, and the ordinary-looking Zhuan with the green coffin on his back. These 3 people actually gave him a faint sense of pressure. Qiu Xiaoyan naturally knew Lu Yitao and Luo Xing. These 2 were also geniuses on the Azure Emperor list. Moreover, they were ranked above him. Feeling the powerful aura of these 2 people, he knew that his ranking in this Azure Emperor list ranking battle would definitely not surpass theirs. However, the thing that caused him to be surprised was that he had never seen the strange young man carrying the green coffin on his back. Originally, he thought that the young man was a nobody. However, as he observed, he discovered that the aura faintly emitted from the young man's body was actually not weaker than LV Tao. In fact, from a certain point of view, the young man was even fiercer than LV Tao. This young man is not simple. Qiu Xiaoyan's eyes flashed. With a refined smile on his face, he led the team from Lu Yan County and merged with Muqin County's team. The relationship between the 2 counties was originally good. Although most of these geniuses did not know each other, they became more familiar with each other after chatting for a while. The number of conversations gradually increased. Qiu Xiaoyan had a refined smile on his face. He cupped his hands politely to Lu Yitao and Luo Xing and said, "Brother Lu, Miss Luo Xing, we meet again. Judging from your auras, you have improved a lot in the past few years. May I know what your cultivation is now?" Lu Yitao's face was indifferent. He cupped his hands and replied, "Brother Qiu is too polite. I was just lucky. I just happened to break through to the ultimate emperor realm some time ago. As for Sister Luo Xing, she's not bad either. She's reached the peak of the ultimate emperor realm and is not far from the ultimate emperor realm." Qiu Xiaoyan's face twitched. Although he had already guessed it, he was still shocked after confirming it. He shook his head and sighed. "The 2 of you are indeed geniuses. This time, Brother Lu should be able to enter the top 15 of the Azure Emperor list. Miss Luo Xing should also be able to enter the top 30. With the 2 of you, Muqin County's results will definitely improve a lot." Speaking of this, Qiu Xiaoyan's eyes revealed a trace of envy. "Brother Qiu, that's not right. The 2 of us are not the strongest representatives of Muqin County this time." Lu Yitao shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Not the 2 of you? Could it be that there is someone stronger?" Qiu Xiaoyan's face turned solemn. Lu Yitao and Luo Xing's cultivations were already terrifying enough. Yet Lu Yitao said that they were not the strongest. "Let me introduce them to you. He is Zhuan. In terms of cultivation, he is the same as me. However, in terms of strength, I am not as good as him. Zhuan is the strongest representative of Muqin County this time." Lu Yitao pointed at Zhuan and said indifferently. Chapter 629. Spring Intoxication Pavilion. Let me introduce him. He's Zhuan. He's stronger than me, so he's the dark horse of our Muqin County this time. LV Tao smiled and pointed at Zhuan as he spoke to Qiu Xiaoyan. "Nice to meet you, Brother Zhua. I never thought that Brother Zhua would be hiding his strength so well." Qiu Xiaoyan grinned. Qiu Xiaoyan grinned. Although his attitude was polite, there was no sincerity in it. In his opinion, Although the aura emitted from Zhuo Wen's body was slightly threatening, it was far from being as strong as LV Tao and Luo Xing. As a result, he believed that LV Tao was purposely trying to confuse him so that he could not identify the strongest representative of Muqin County. Zhuo Wen's senses were far sharper than ordinary people's, so he obviously saw the disapproval in Qiu Xiaoyun's eyes. However, he did not pursue the matter. Instead, he nodded and smiled at Qiu Xiaoyun as a form of greeting. Zhuo Wen's attitude caused Qiu Xiaoyun to frown slightly as he felt slightly uncomfortable in his heart. However, he did not pay too much attention to it. Instead, he quietly chatted with LV Tao about some trivial matters and did not pay much attention to Zhuo Wen. In Qiu Xiaoyun's opinion, the strongest representative of Muqin County was without a doubt LV Tao, so he obviously had to establish a good relationship with him. Zhuo Wen also noticed Qiu Xiaoyun's little actions, but he didn't care. He just smirked and silently followed the group. Qiu Changxing was obviously very familiar with the imperial city. After passing through several streets and alleys, he arrived in front of a rather luxurious loft. Above the loft, there was a signboard, and on the signboard were 3 large words: Intoxicated Spring Pavilion. At this moment, the sky had darkened. The sun was setting in the west, and night silently descended. The Spring Intoxication Pavilion was extremely large, spanning over 100 kilometers. There were many pavilions within, and there were many lights. At this moment, there were 2 rows of gorgeously dressed young women standing at the entrance of the Spring Intoxication Pavilion. They winked at the passers-by with every frown and smile, attracting a lot of people. Looking at the overall structure of the Drunken Spring Pavilion, Nguyen frowned slightly. From the name, this Drunken Spring Pavilion should be a place of romance. Why did Qiu Changxing bring them here? Qiu Changxing coughed dryly as if he had sensed the many astonished gazes behind him. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. This Intoxicated Spring Pavilion is not what you think it is. The ladies inside are all courtesans who sell their skills and not their bodies. Moreover, the Drunken Spring Pavilion is also the largest inn in the imperial capital. There are many rooms inside, and there are many ways to entertain yourself. In the entire imperial capital, it can be considered an extremely famous place. Moreover, many high-ranking officials and dignitaries of the imperial city will come to the Drunken Spring Pavilion. If you're lucky, you might be able to get to know quite a few people from the imperial city. At this point, Qiu Changxing's eyes revealed a glimmer of light. The others also revealed expressions of understanding. So this was Qiu Changxing's goal. He wanted to use this place to get to know his connections in the imperial city. Although Qiu Changxing said so, many of the women in the group frowned, and a trace of displeasure appeared on their faces. Good. Brother Qiu, you really know how to pick a place. I like this place the most. Lu Hantian suddenly laughed loudly, causing many people to roll their eyes at him. Let's go in. There are at least 200 people in our group. There aren't many inns in the imperial capital that can accommodate so many people, and this Drunken Spring Pavilion is one of them. Qiu Changxing smiled and led the group into the Drunken Spring Pavilion. Guess please. Are you all here to stay? After entering through the door, a middle-aged woman who still retained her charm walked over with a smile while waving a cattail leaf fan. Her rouged face was filled with enthusiasm. Especially when she saw the large group of people behind Qiu Changxing, this middle-aged woman's eyes shone. If so many people stayed, their Drunken Spring Pavilion would be able to earn a large sum of money. Therefore, this middle-aged woman became even more enthusiastic. Help us prepare a room each. Although we have quite a number of people, your Drunken Spring Pavilion isn't small either. You should be able to take out so many rooms, right? Qiu Changxing said with a faint smile. No problem. Sir, you made the right choice by choosing our Drunken Spring Pavilion. In the imperial capital, there aren't many people who don't know the name of the Drunken Spring Pavilion. Men, quickly arrange rooms for this group of gentlemen. The middle-aged woman coquettishly winked at Qiu Changxing, then waved the cattail leaf fan in her right hand. A terrifying force exploded, and the originally tightly shut rooms in the pavilion were instantly opened by this force. Then, one after another, graceful young women walked out of the rooms. This middle-aged woman isn't simple. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. The aura that this middle-aged woman had unintentionally released just now was rather terrifying. It was probably comparable to Su Chang's back then. Clearly, this middle-aged woman should be an ultimate ninth will Emperor realm expert. This drunken spring pavilion wasn't simple. Just this madam who welcomed the guests was actually an ultimate ninth will Emperor realm expert. He really didn't know how powerful the owner of this drunken spring pavilion was. Alright mother, we're coming. Yo! There are quite a few guests today, and there are quite a few handsome men among them. The young women who walked out of the rooms all had charming smiles on their faces as they constantly sized up the numerous geniuses behind Qiu Changxing. Many of the young women's eyes were filled with lust, and their words were flirtatious. Many of the young men in the group immediately blushed, causing the women to giggle. Zhuan couldn't help but look at this group of young women, and a trace of admiration appeared in his eyes. This group of women was quite young, and their cultivation wasn't high either. Perhaps it was because their talent wasn't high that they'd entered the drunken spring pavilion. Although the cultivations of these young women were low, all of them knew how to display their charm and gentleness. Their every frown and smile was just right, causing many men to be unable to help but become absent-minded. Even LV Tao, who had an indifferent expression, revealed a trace of surprise in his eyes. Men are all bad. Suddenly, a clear and cold voice slowly sounded out. Zhuan followed the voice and immediately saw Luo Xing's pretty face covered in frost. At this moment, her beautiful eyes were coldly staring at Zhuan with a trace of hostility. Zhuan was startled. He didn't expect Luo Xing's reaction to be so big. Even Qing Lian, who was standing beside Luo Xing, had a trace of hostility in her beautiful eyes at this moment. She similarly stared at Zhuan, causing Zhuan to be confused. On the other hand, LV Tao and Qiu Shaoyun instantly blushed after hearing Luo Xing's words. They turned their faces away and no longer looked at the young women in the pavilion. Zhuan shrugged his shoulders and didn't feel anything. He didn't have any improper thoughts in his heart. He clearly knew that these women who had given themselves to a place like the drunken spring pavilion were all pitiful people. Besides admiration, there was also a trace of pity in his eyes. A rare trace of anger surfaced on Luo Xing's pretty face when she saw Zhuowen's indifferent attitude. She coldly snorted in a low voice and was actually sulking. On the other hand, Qing Lian shook her head and didn't say anything. However, one could tell from Qing Lian's expression that she wasn't in a good mood either. Ladies, quickly arrange rooms for these men. Remember, you must arrange for the best rooms. The middle-aged woman looked at the many stunned geniuses in the group and immediately smiled beautifully. The palm leaf fan in her hand continuously waved. The young women in the pavilion immediately laughed and ran down the pavilion. They all enthusiastically pulled the geniuses in the group and wanted to lead them to the rooms. Hey! Why didn't I bring any girls? This isn't fair. This is blatant discrimination. The young women basically chose the young geniuses. As for Lu Hantian, Lu Nantian, and Qiu Changxing, they were ignored. The three of them were old men and naturally wouldn't be welcomed by these young women. Lu Hantian wasn't happy and boasted shamelessly. With this shout, the young women in the surrounding immediately distanced themselves from him. Lu Hantian's appearance was like an old beggar. Which girl would want to get close to this guy? However, the charming middle-aged woman's beautiful eyes flickered. She could faintly feel the terrifying aura emitted from Lu Hantian's body. She immediately smiled and said, "The three of you can follow me. In any case, the rooms aren't far from here." "Then I'll have to trouble you." Qiu Changxing laughed loudly and led Lu Hantian and Lu Nantian to follow behind the middle-aged woman. The group behind them were all led by beauties and followed behind the middle-aged woman. "Young master, can you let my daughter lead you?" A young woman around 15 years old dressed in an emerald green dress came to Zhuowen's side at this moment. Her large watery eyes secretly sized up Zhuowen. Her sparkling cheeks revealed a trace of crimson, but it was more of curiosity. The young man in front of her was carrying a strange green coffin. His temperament was outstanding and his body revealed traces of mystery. All of these attracted the young woman's gaze. Therefore, she took the initiative to choose Zhuan to lead him to the rooms. Then I'll have to trouble you. Zhuan revealed a trace of a gentle smile and said rather politely. It's no trouble. Young master can just follow me. My name is Miao Lu. Young master can just call me Lu. Lu? Revealed a trace of a bashful smile and very naturally took Zhuowen's right hand and pulled Zhuowen deeper inside. Is the way your drunken spring pavilion welcomes guests? Zhuowen was somewhat speechless towards this way of welcoming guests, so he opened his mouth and asked. This is the way my mother set up to welcome guests. Because most of the guests who stay in the drunken spring pavilion are male, female welcoming guests is more attractive. Like us, our only function is to go out and welcome guests and serve them. As long as we serve them well, then we can receive rewards. Lu's personality was rather lively and wasn't afraid of strangers at all. After chatting with Zhuowen for a while, she got along well and even giggled from time to time. Did you enter the drunken spring pavilion willingly? Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he suddenly asked. We all did it willingly. Actually, the drunken spring pavilion isn't a place of romance like young master thinks. The women here are all multi-talented and only sell their skills and not their bodies. It's a place of entertainment for many high officials and nobles in the imperial city. Mother said before that since ancient times, heroes have loved beauties. Being able to have the company of beauties while drinking wine and composing poetry naturally adds a great deal of elegance. Lu giggled. Chapter 630. Spirit Stones. The drunken spring pavilion was divided into two areas, named Windflower and Snow Moon. The Windflower area was where the courtesans of the drunken spring pavilion played the zither and sang, providing entertainment for the high officials and dignitaries. The Snow Moon area was made up of many pavilions, specifically for the guests to stay in. Mother Su took the lead and led the mighty group through the Windflower district. It had to be said that the Windflower district was indeed bustling with activity. In the center of the Windflower district stood a huge circular stage. On the stage, graceful figures danced gracefully like butterflies in the depths of the flower bushes. On the other side of the stage were rows of pavilions. There were many figures sitting in the pavilions, drinking fine wine and chatting as they admired the graceful figures of the dancers on the stage. As the two groups passed by, many geniuses looked enviously at the high officials and dignitaries enjoying themselves in the Windflower area. Zhuowen sneered inwardly. He knew that these people who only cared about enjoying themselves were basically second-generation young masters, without the slightest bit of the heart of a powerhouse. If they had the heart of a powerhouse, they wouldn't waste their time on such meaningless enjoyment. After passing through the Windflower district, Mother Su led the group to the Shuiyu district. Unlike the Windflower district, the Shuiyu district was much quieter. There were many pavilions and pavilions in the Shuiyu district. Inside the pavilions, there were many rooms. There were at least 1,000 pavilions. How spectacular! There are actually so many rooms here. Looking at the densely packed pavilions, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Qiu Changxing was right. There were indeed a lot of rooms in the drunken spring pavilion. There were actually over 1,000 rooms, enough to accommodate 1,000 people. Mother Su, you're still so efficient. This mid-grade spirit stone should be enough to pay for our lodging, right? Qiu Changxing smiled and threw out a palm-sized, sparkling, translucent stone with a threatening spirit qi into Mother Su's hand. Oh, Uncle Qiu is too polite. These mid-grade spirit stones are enough. Daughters, quickly bring your husbands to their rooms. You must serve them well in their daily lives. Holding the mid-grade spirit stones, Mother Su immediately smiled charmingly and hurriedly gave orders to the young girls below. Mom, don't worry. Your daughter will serve you with all her heart. When they finished talking, the young women took their geniuses to the pavilions in the Shuiyu area. They were probably going to pick a pavilion for them. Spirit stones. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze was fixed on the spirit stone in the woman's hand. His eyes were full of light. The aura emitted by this spirit stone gave Zhuowen a very familiar feeling. This spirit stone actually contains spiritual qi. Narrowing his eyes, Jun finally realized why the aura of the spirit stone was so familiar. Back when he was at the Zhongling Mountain in the Yuanqi Pagoda, he had absorbed a lot of spirit qi in the Zhongling Mountain and had broken through to the beginner level of the Great Sun Nirvana technique. Spiritual energy was a type of energy that was of a higher grade. He did not expect that the so-called spirit stones would contain this type of spiritual energy. Young master, let me take you to your room. In the future, Lu'er will help you take care of your daily life. Beside him, Lu'er was rather obedient. Since Yun didn't move, she also didn't move. She just quietly stayed by Zhuowen's side. Lu'er, do you know what that spirit stone is? Zhuowen suddenly asked. When Lu'er heard this, there was a trace of doubt in her beautiful eyes. She seemed to be surprised that Zhuowen actually didn't know about spirit stones. However, she didn't care too much and said, spirit stones are the common currency of the imperial capital. These spirit stones are divided into low-grade spirit stones, mid-grade spirit stones, high-grade spirit stones, and transcendent-grade spirit stones. Spirit stones contain spiritual qi. This spiritual qi is very beneficial to the four Venerable Realm experts. It is something that the four Venerable Realm experts must have. Perhaps in other counties, spirit stones should be more commonly seen on the four Venerable Realm experts. However, the imperial capital is under the jurisdiction of the Qing Emperor. It has long since unified the currency and uses spirit stones for transactions. The value of spirit stones is extremely high. It is said that a low-grade spirit stone is equivalent to 10,000 imperial essence pills. In the imperial capital, as long as you have enough spirit stones, you can basically buy anything. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded in relief. No wonder he had never heard of spirit stones before. It turned out that only the four Venerable Realm experts possessed spirit stones in Muqing County. Only in the imperial capital did spirit stones become a unified currency. Lu'er, do you have any spirit stones on you? Thinking up to here, Zhuowen suddenly asked Lu'er. I do. However, Lu'er doesn't have a lot of spirit stones on me. I only have a total of 5 low-grade spirit stones. Lu'er has saved these spirit stones from last year until now. Lu'er was rather naive and unaffected. She actually didn't hide anything from Zhuowen. This made Zhuowen have a rather good impression of her. Since Lu'er could still maintain such a naive character, this intoxicated spring pavilion probably treated these young girls quite well. With a flip of his right hand, a golden ginseng appeared in Zhuowen's hand. He smiled and said, "This is a third-grade spirit medicine, the ginseng treasure fruit. Can it be exchanged for the 5 spirit stones in your hand?" Zhuowen still decided to study spirit stones. If spirit stones really did contain spiritual qi, perhaps it would be quite beneficial to his great nirvana Sunday. One had to know that his great nirvana son had relied on this spiritual qi to break through to the entry level. Third-grade spirit medicine? Looking at the ginseng treasure fruit with a threatening medicinal aura in Zhuowen's hand, Lu'er's beautiful eyes widened. She hurriedly shook her head and said, "Young master, a third-grade spirit medicine is at least worth 20 low-grade spirit stones. This ginseng treasure fruit of yours has a dense medicinal aura. I'm afraid it's the best among third-grade spirit medicines. Its value is even higher. I can't take advantage of you." Hearing this, the smile at the corners of Zhuowen's mouth became even gentler. This Lu'er's temperament wasn't bad. She actually flatly refused to take advantage of him. Zhuowen's favorable impression of her increased quite a bit. "Don't worry. Being able to casually take out a third-grade spirit medicine means that I have quite a few spirit medicines on me. I only want to use spirit stones to study it. Just exchange with me," Zhuowen said sincerely. Lu'er hesitated for a moment when she heard this, then said, "All right then. Young master, consider this as Lu'er owing you a favor this time. If young master really needs spirit stones so much, you can totally go to the imperial capital's appraiser hall to exchange for spirit stones. As long as it's a treasure, the appraiser hall will accept it. Moreover, the price they offer is also very fair." "There's such a place in the imperial capital? That's fine. Bring me to the appraiser hall to take a look tomorrow. Take this ginseng treasure fruit." Zhuowen smiled lightly and stuffed the spirit medicine into Lu'er's hand. Then thank you very much, young master. These are the spirit stones Luer saved up. Luer grinned as she received the spirit medicine, then withdrew 5 spirit stones from the universe pouch at her waist and passed them to Jun. Moreover, Jun also clearly felt that Luer had become much closer to him. Obviously, his gift of the spirit medicine earlier caused Luer's favorable impression of him to greatly increase. Young master, let's go, I'll bring you to the side room. After the two of them finished exchanging spirit stones, Luer pulled Juoen into the Snow Moon district. After choosing an elegant side room in one of the pavilions, they were just about to enter the side room when Luo Xing, who had a cold expression, just happened to come out from the room beside Juoen's. The two of them glanced at each other, then Luo Xing's beautiful eyes landed on Luer, who was pulling Juoen's hand. Her beautiful eyes contained traces of coldness, and with a cold snort, she actually directly brushed past Jun. Sensing Luo Xing's baffling attitude, Jun was somewhat at a loss. He didn't seem to have offended Luo Xing before, so why did this girl seem to be very unhappy with him? Luer, on the other hand, was exceptionally intelligent as she secretly laughed and said, "Young master, that young lady just now was very beautiful. Such a girl is rare even in the imperial capital. She's beautiful, but unfortunately, she's a rose with thorns." Now, her attitude is even a bit baffling. Jun shook his head and said helplessly, "A woman's heart was truly like a needle at the bottom of the ocean." He completely didn't understand. Was that beautiful big sister just now jealous and angry? I'm afraid that big sister likes you, young master. Luer's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of craftiness as she said with a smile. Likes me? Juan shook his head and continued, Luer, I'm afraid that you're thinking too much. Luo Xing isn't the kind of girl that easily likes men. Moreover, speaking up to here, Mu Chenshue's alluring face involuntarily surfaced in Zhuowen's mind, and the corners of his mouth revealed a faint smile. He looks like young master's heart already belongs to someone. The one that young master likes is definitely even more beautiful than that big sister just now, right? Luer suddenly laughed delicately. Hearing this, Zhuowen's expression was slightly embarrassed, and he shook his head and said, Now isn't the time to talk about this. Luer had better hurry up and open this room. Luer giggled and took out the key to open the room door. After that, she lit a candle within the room. Instantly, the originally pitch-black room became brightly lit. Sizing up the room's surroundings, Zhuowen nodded slightly. This room was rather spacious, and the furnishings in the surroundings were also extremely elegant and simple. A wisp of delicate fragrance drifted within, and sniffing it carefully, it immediately made one feel relaxed and happy. Luer, you withdraw first. Come back tomorrow morning and bring me to the treasure appraising pavilion. Looking around the room, Zhuan instructed Luer, and Luer obediently left the room. After Luer left, Zhuan silently sat cross-legged on the bed. He first regulated the aura in his dantian before taking out 5 pieces of sparkling and translucent stones from his spirit ring. They were precisely the spirit stones that he exchanged from Luer. Silently gazing at the 5 spirit stones before him, Zhuowen's gaze flickered, and he casually took one of the spirit stones. Instantly, a cool and refreshing energy passed through his palm and bore into his body. It was precisely that familiar spirit energy. This spirit energy passed through Zhuowen's meridians and bore into the space between Zhuowen's brows, and it actually faintly strengthened the mental energy within his Naiwen palace. There really is spirit energy inside. This spirit energy is even able to nourish the mental energy within my Naiwen palace. After discovering that what the spirit stone contained was indeed spirit energy, Yun became rather excited and started to ceaselessly absorb the spirit energy within the spirit stone. Kacha. In a short while, the spirit stone in his hand was completely exhausted, and it transformed into an ordinary stone before shattering into powder in Zhuowen's hand. After the spirit stone shattered, Zhuan continued to use the next spirit stone. After roughly the time for half an incense stick to burn, all 5 spirit stones were completely absorbed by Zhuowen, but Zhuowen's face revealed an expression of wanting more. Chapter 631. Treasure inspecting pavilion. Early in the morning, a cool breeze brushed past. Warm sunlight penetrated through the clouds and spilled onto the ground, causing the chilly morning to become warm and gentle. Dong dong dong. A clear knocking sound sounded out. Zhuan slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of light flashed past his eyes as he said in a clear voice, "Come in." The door opened, and Lu, who wore a green dress and had a hot figure, entered the room with a basin of hot water. "Young master, wash up. Did you rest well yesterday?" Luer placed the basin on the table and looked at Zhuan with a grin. "Not bad." The corners of Zhuan's mouth curled up slightly. He took the towel that Luer handed over and casually washed up before saying, "Lu, bring me to the treasure inspecting pavilion today. Right now, I'm in need of spirit stones." "Young master, don't be anxious. Luer will first tidy up your clothes, then bring you to the treasure inspecting pavilion." Luer grinned as she arrived before Zhuan and very carefully tidied up his clothes for Zhuan. Zhuan was slightly stunned, and his face revealed a trace of awkwardness. He was used to being alone and was really not used to the feeling of being served by others. However, he also knew that Luer's job was to serve him, so he did not refuse. "Young master, you seem to be a bit nervous. Have you never been served before?" Luer's eyes revealed a trace of craftiness as she giggled. Hearing this, Zhuan helplessly shook his head. This Luer really dared to say anything and was completely without the slightest bit scheming. However, such a lack of scheming caused Zhuan to have a rather good impression of Luer. After tidying up his clothes, Luer brought Zhuan out of the room and walked towards the treasure inspecting pavilion within the imperial capital. The treasure inspecting pavilion was not very far from the drunken spring pavilion. Luer and Zhuan only spent half an incense stick's time to arrive before the treasure inspecting pavilion. Zhuan's eyes revealed a trace of shock as he stared at the enormous tower-like building in front of him. He had heard from Luer that the inspection treasure hall had a total of 4 floors. However, he did not expect it to be so majestic. The entrance to the appraiser hall was bustling with people. Most of them were cultivators with powerful auras, and there was no lack of Ultimate Emperor realm experts amongst them. Zhuan felt as if he was in a dream when he saw so many Ultimate Emperor realm experts around him. It was almost impossible to see so many Ultimate Emperor realm experts in the capital of Muqin County. Moreover, they were all strolling around in groups. Perhaps only the imperial capital of the entire Qingxian Empire would be able to achieve such a scale. At the entrance of the appraiser hall stood 2 burly men who looked like iron towers. The 2 of them stared coldly at the people entering and exiting the hall. "Stop. The appraiser hall isn't a place that just anyone can enter. Little brother, do you have an invitation from the appraiser masters in the appraiser hall?" When Zhuan arrived at the entrance, a robust man instantly stretched out his hand to stop Zhuan and asked indifferently, "Must I have an invitation to enter the appraiser hall?" His brows furrowed slightly. He did not expect that an invitation would be required to enter the appraiser hall. This was his first time here, so how could he possibly have an invitation? If you don't have an invitation, you will also have the qualifications to enter as long as your strength has reached the Ultimate Emperor realm or above. "You are so young," the robust man shook his head. When he saw how young Zhuan was, he subconsciously felt that it was unlikely that Zhuan had reached the Ultimate Emperor realm. Therefore, he decisively stopped him. Zhuan was slightly startled when he heard this. No wonder only powerful Ultimate Emperor realm experts entered the appraiser hall. So there was such a rule. Zhuan shook his head. Just as he was about to reveal the aura within his body, a mocking laughter slowly rang out. "I really don't know where this country boy came from. He doesn't even know the rules of the appraiser hall and dares to come here and make a fool of himself." When this voice rang out, Zhuan's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately turned his head and saw 2 slender and elegant figures appear behind him. One of the figures was about 22 years old. She was dressed in green silk and her hair was tied up in a bun. Her delicate skin was as flawless as snow, and there was a trace of coldness between her brows. She had an unapproachable look on her face. The other figure stood beside the ice-cold woman. She was about the same age as Zhuan, but her looks were much worse than the ice-cold woman's. Her appearance was rather ordinary. At this moment, The younger woman had a mocking smile on her face as she stared calmly at Tun. Zhuowen knew that the words just now should have been said by this ordinary-looking woman. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that these two women were wearing Arcana Master's robes. The ordinary-looking woman had 3 stars embroidered on her chest, indicating that she was a rank 3 Arcana Master. This woman's natural talent wasn't bad. She wasn't even 20 years old, yet her spiritual force was already at the 3rd grade. She could be considered a genius. What surprised Jun was that the woman with an icy expression wore a white robe that was like a flawless white lotus, and there were actually 4 stars embroidered on her chest. This woman was actually a rank 4 Arcana Master. I truly never imagined that Miss Huangfu and Miss Jingyun would actually come to the appraiser hall. It's truly our honor. Ladies, please come in. The 2 robust men that were originally cold and indifferent had a great change in attitude. Their originally cold and indifferent expressions were completely replaced by enthusiasm, and they even revealed a trace of flattering smiles. Huangfu? When she heard the surname Huangfu, Lu'er, who was standing beside Zhuowen, trembled. Zhuowen felt Lu'er's unusual behavior, and his brows knit together slightly as his gaze landed on Lu. Young master, Huangfu is the surname of a direct descendant of the imperial family. I'm afraid that Miss Huangfu is a member of the imperial family. It's best if we try our best not to offend her, Lu'er said somewhat worriedly. The 2 women slowly walked past Zhuowen. The woman with an icy expression didn't even look at Zhuowen from beginning to end. Perhaps in her opinion, Zhuowen wasn't even worthy of her attention. Ladies, please come in. The 2 robust men hurriedly and enthusiastically gestured for them to enter. Their attitudes were extremely respectful and submissive. I say, the 2 of them don't have an invitation letter, nor have they reached the pinnacle of the 5-wheel emperor realm, right? Are you going to let them in just like that? Then wouldn't the appraiser hall's rules exist in name only? Just as the 2 women were about to enter, Zhuowen's unhurried voice rang out, causing the 2 women's movements to stiffen. Their beautiful eyes simultaneously focused on the indifferent young man who was carrying a green coffin on his back. As expected of an ignorant brat, the ordinary-looking woman crossed her arms in front of her chest and stared at Zhuowen mockingly, as if she was waiting to watch a good show. As for the indifferent woman, she watched coldly from the sidelines. A hint of mockery also appeared in her beautiful eyes. Brat, you better watch your mouth. How can you compare to Miss Huangfu and Miss Jingyun? Both of them are geniuses of the Imperial Capital's Arcane Guild. Also, I forgot to tell you, Arcanists can freely enter the appraiser hall. Tell me. Firstly, your cultivation isn't high enough. Secondly, you don't have an invitation letter. Thirdly, you're not an Arcanist. Do you think you have the qualifications to enter the appraiser hall? Let me give you a piece of advice. If you don't want to suffer, get lost as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. The 2 robust men immediately glared at Zhuowen fiercely. In their hearts, they secretly thought that this young man really didn't know what was good for him. Must he suffer a little before he is satisfied? At this moment, Lu'er, who was standing beside Zhuowen, was trembling slightly. She hugged Zhuowen's arm tightly and hid behind him. The 2 robust men looked ferocious. Since Lu'er was still young, she naturally felt terrified. My cultivation isn't high enough? I'm not an Arcanist? Which dog eye of yours saw that I don't have the qualifications to enter? Or are both of your dog eyes blind? You think I don't have the qualifications to enter without being verified? Jun straightened his back and spoke coldly. As soon as these words were spoken, the 2 robust men were stunned. Then they revealed furious expressions. Instantly, a terrifying aura erupted from their bodies. Both of them were actually 5-wheel Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators. Brat, if you're here to cause trouble in the appraiser hall, let me give you a piece of advice. Otherwise, the 2 of us really won't be polite. At that time, you'll regret it. The 2 robust men glared coldly at Zhuowen with sinister gazes. Regret? Zhuowen sneered repeatedly. He lightly patted the green coffin with his right hand. Instantly, the coffin lid opened a crack. A terrifying pressure descended at the entrance of the appraiser hall like a towering mountain. The surrounding air instantly froze. Plop. The ferocious expressions on the two robust men's faces had long been restrained. Instead, they were replaced by terrified expressions. Under this pressure, they directly knelt on the ground. They struggled with all their might but were unable to break free. How is this possible? How can there be such a terrifying pressure? What cultivation level does this brat have? The two burly men kneeling on the ground were filled with fear and remorse. They could not imagine that Zhuowen was able to release such a terrifying pressure. The expressions of the two women standing behind the burly man finally changed. Although the pressure was not directed at them, even the aftermath of the pressure was enough to make the two women shudder in fear. This was especially so for the ordinary-looking woman. At this moment, her delicate body was on the verge of collapsing. She actually couldn't stand steadily and was about to fall to the ground. Fortunately, the cold-looking woman acted in time and completely stabilized the woman's body. "Tell me, do you think I have the qualifications to enter the appraiser hall now?" Zhuowen's foot stomped on the ground. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly as he asked indifferently. At this moment, the two robust men were barely able to support their bodies. Blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. With great difficulty, they said, "Sir, we were blind just now. We didn't know that you were hiding your strength. If we have offended you in any way, please forgive us. Please let us go." Hearing this, Zhuowen coldly snorted. He lightly patted his right hand, and the slit in the green coffin behind him slowly closed. The terrifying pressure also completely disappeared. Only after the pressure disappeared did the two robust men let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, they hurriedly lowered their heads and made an inviting gesture. The young man in front of them was too terrifying. Just the pressure that he released actually made them feel suffocated. At this moment, Lu, who was beside Zhuowen, stared at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes. Although she knew that Zhuowen was a genius young man who came from another region and was definitely not weak, she didn't expect him to be powerful to such an extent. She had heard that the two robust men guarding the appraiser hall were powerful ultimate five-wheel Emperor realm cultivators. She didn't expect that they wouldn't even dare to move under Zhuowen's pressure just now. Chapter 632. Three-colored spirit fruit. Shaking his head helplessly, Wen also understood the cruelty of this world where the strong reigned supreme when he sensed the change in attitude of the two burly men. If you didn't have strength, you wouldn't be respected at all. Bringing Lu along, Wen directly brushed past the two women beside him and instantly entered the inspection treasure hall. The cold woman's willowy brows knitted slightly. Zhuowen's disregard made her feel a little uncomfortable in her heart. As for the ordinary-looking woman standing beside her, her beautiful eyes flickered, but in the end, she didn't have the courage to stop Zhuowen. The pressure that Zhuowen released earlier was extremely terrifying. She was very clear that with her strength, she was simply no match for Zhuowen. "Senior Huangfu, this kid doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He even dares to look down on you. Are we going to let him off just like that?" The ordinary-looking woman was still somewhat unwilling and whispered to the cold woman. The cold woman shook her head and said, "This time, we came to the inspection treasure hall for the auction on the 4th floor. There's no need to cause unnecessary trouble." Hearing this, the ordinary-looking woman could only nod her head. The status of the cold woman in front of her was much higher than hers. Moreover, the cold woman's talent was also much more outstanding than hers, so she didn't dare to disobey the orders of the cold woman. "Let's go. That kid is just a small fry. There's no need to take him to heart." The cold woman shook her head and immediately led the ordinary-looking woman into the inspection treasure hall. The inspection treasure hall was extremely large. After entering through the door, there was a passageway that was like a long snake. After walking out of the passageway, what appeared in front of Zhuowen was an extremely large hall. At this moment, the hall was bustling with people. At a glance, it was filled with people. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that other than cultivators, there were also many arcanists wearing long robes. Moreover, there were quite a number of them. It seems that the scale of the arcane guild in the imperial capital is quite large. Just the number of arcanists here has already surpassed the arcane guild in Broken Rock City. I wonder where Master Kuraki and the others have gone? At this point, a trace of doubt appeared in Zhuowen's eyes. Before the destruction of Broken Rock City, the Arcane Guild in Broken Rock City had already moved out of the city, and Master Kuraki had naturally left with the Arcane Guild. Until now, Zhuowen had not heard any news about Master Kuraki. Speaking of which, Master Kuraki could be considered as Zhuowen's half-master. Back then, it was Kuraki who introduced Zhuowen to the field of psychic power and discovered Zhuowen's talent in psychic power. Lu, do you know where the Spirit Stone exchange area is? Zhuowen knew nothing about the appraiser hall and could only seek help from Luer. Luer isn't too sure either. Young master, go ask the staff at the counter. Luer scratched her head and said somewhat embarrassedly. She was only a little servant girl in the Drunken Spring Pavilion and did not have the qualifications to enter a place like the appraiser hall. How could she be familiar with the things in the appraiser hall? Nodding, Zhuowen walked straight to a counter. There was an old man with white hair and beard leaning against the counter. He had an indifferent attitude towards the cultivators looking at the items in front of the counter. Zhuowen's arrival did not attract the old man's attention. He only casually glanced at Zhuowen before his eyes became misty, looking as if he had not yet woken up. The old man's attitude caused Zhuowen to be somewhat speechless. In the end, he could only lightly knock on the table and ask, "May I ask, if I need to exchange for spirit stones, where can I exchange spirit stones in the inspection hall?" The old man turned his head slightly and stared at Zhuowen with slight astonishment. He said indifferently, "Are the treasures on you valuable enough? The appraiser hall has a requirement. Only treasures with a value of 50 low-grade spirit stones and above are qualified to exchange for spirit stones. Otherwise, everything is off the table." "I see. This should be enough to prove that I have the qualifications to exchange for spirit stones, right?" Nodding, Yun took out a palm-sized fruit from his spirit ring. It had 3 colors that constantly alternated with each other. A fragrance similar to that of orchids and musk slowly drifted out from the fruit. A 5th-grade elixir, the 3-colored spirit fruit? Looking at the 3-colored spirit fruit in Zhuowen's hand, the old man suddenly stood up. His originally indifferent expression had long disappeared and was replaced by a dignified expression. He did not expect that this young man in front of him would actually be able to take out a 5th-grade elixir. Moreover, it was one of the rarer 5th-grade elixirs. "Put away the 3-colored spirit fruit first, then follow me to the inner room." The old man's face was as calm as water. He stood up and led Zhuowen to the inner room behind the counter. A 5th-grade elixir was very rare. He did not expect that this young man in front of him would actually possess such an elixir. How could the old man not treat it seriously? The corner of his mouth slightly curled up. Zhuowen had obtained countless resources from the Blood Demon inheritance. Back then, even a high-grade Qiankuan bag could not contain them. Although he had left most of his resources to the Zhuo family, Zhuowen still had a lot of resources on him. At this moment, it was just right to put them to good use. The furnishings of the inner room were similar to a study room. A refreshing sandalwood fragrance slowly drifted in the air, making one feel relaxed and happy. The two of them casually sat opposite each other in the middle, while Luer stood obediently beside Zhuowen. Her beautiful eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor. When Zhuowen took out a 5th-grade elixir, she was also inexplicably shocked. "Little friend, can you let me take a look at the 3-colored spirit fruit? I am one of the appraisers in the appraisal pavilion." At this moment, the old man's face was much more amiable and enthusiastic. Nodding his head, Zhuowen passed the 3-colored spirit fruit to the old man. After the old man received the fruit, he carefully held it in his palm and carefully examined it. His turbid eyes revealed a trace of satisfaction. "Little friend, the quality of your 3-colored spirit fruit is excellent. I will not let you suffer a loss. How about 30 mid-grade spirit stones?" After pondering for a moment, the old man named a price. 30 mid-grade spirit stones? Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded his head in satisfaction. Spirit stones were divided into 4 grades: low grade, mid-grade, high grade, and supreme grade. The exchange rate for each grade was 100. For example, a mid-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 100 low-grade spirit stones, a high-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 100 mid-grade spirit stones, and so on. It was said that supreme-grade spirit stones were extremely rare. Even if one used 100 high-grade spirit stones to exchange, no one would be willing to exchange it, unless one used rare treasures to exchange for supreme-grade spirit stones. This old man was indeed generous. According to the market price, the three-colored spirit fruit was about 30 mid-grade spirit stones. The old man did not deliberately lower the price. Instead, he was just stating the facts. Okay. Zhuan nodded his head. The old man revealed a smile and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, 30 crystal-clear spirit stones appeared on the table in front of the two. Here are 30 mid-grade spirit stones. Little friend, you must keep them well. The old man smiled and said. His right hand touched the spirit stones on the table. With a thought, the spirit stones immediately entered the spiritual ring, leaving only one mid-grade spirit stone lying quietly in Zhuowen's palm. Feeling the spirit energy coming from the spirit stone in his palm, Zhuowen's face revealed a joyful expression as he said to himself, "It is indeed a mid-grade spirit stone. The spirit energy inside is much richer than that of a low-grade spirit stone." Little friend, do you have anything else you want to exchange for spirit stones? This old man can appraise them for you one by one. The price will definitely not let you suffer a loss. The old man grinned. He knew that since Zhuan could take out a grade 5 spirit medicine, then he probably had other good things on him. This young man before him was a big customer, so he naturally would not let him go easily. I still have some things that I don't need to exchange for spirit stones. Nodding his head, Zhuan bent his finger and tapped. Instantly, the remaining resources in the spiritual ring were all piled up on the table between the two of them. Soon, they piled up into a small mountain. Most of them were grade 3 and 4 spirit medicines, as well as some armor skills of a lower grade. There was also a small amount of earth-rank spirit treasures. Looking at the small mountain of resources on the table, the old man and Luer were both stunned. Their faces revealed astonishment. They did not expect that Zhuowen actually had so many resources on him. The old man's eyes instantly revealed a trace of brilliance. He looked at Zhuowen as if he was staring at a pie. He really did not expect that this young man before him actually had so many resources on him. With so many resources, the old man could earn quite a bit just from the commission alone. Therefore, the old man's expression was even more enthusiastic at this moment. For hours later, Zhuan and Luer walked out of the inner room under the old man's enthusiastic lead. Zhuan took out too many resources. Even the old man spent 4 hours to appraise them. Zhuowen's harvest this time was not bad. After exchanging all the resources on him, he obtained a total of 50,000 mid-grade spirit stones. Due to the appraiser hall's regulations, the highest amount of spirit stones that could be exchanged could only be mid-grade spirit stones. Otherwise, Yuan would have exchanged all the mid-grade spirit stones on him for high-grade spirit stones. Little friend, if you have anything that you need to exchange for spirit stones in the future, feel free to look for this old man. This old man will definitely give you a fair price, the old man said to Zhuowen rather enthusiastically. Nodding his head, Yuan said indifferently, "Don't worry. If I really need to exchange for spirit stones in the future, I will definitely look for you." As he spoke, Yuan was about to leave the appraiser hall with Luer. However, just as he was about to step out of the appraiser hall's door, a burst of noise suddenly came from the depths of the hall. Let's go quickly. This time, the appraiser hall's 4th floor will be auctioning the Greater Infinity Sword formation. You have to know that this is a grade 5 origin formation. Although its power is greatly reduced due to the lack of a portion, its power is far more powerful than an ordinary grade 4 origin formation. I'm afraid that many Arcana Masters will come to bid for this Greater Infinity Sword formation this time. 2 people passed by and were discussing matters regarding the Greater Infinity Sword formation. This caused Zhuowen's eyebrows to slightly raise. He did not expect that the appraiser hall would actually auction a grade 5 origin formation. This caused Zhuowen to be rather curious. Just as Zhuowen was pondering about the Greater Infinity Sword formation, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind him. "Zhuowen, you really came to the imperial capital. Haha, I knew you would come. Chapter 633. SS Greater Infinity Sword Formation. Zhuan turned around and saw an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion wearing an arcanist's robe. When Zhuan saw the old man, he was startled at first, but then a hint of surprise appeared at the corner of his mouth. Old Songmu, I didn't expect you to be in the Imperial City too. Zhuan was pleasantly surprised. This figure was Master Songmu, whom he had not seen for a long time. Chiu Chou had told him that the Arcane Guild in Broken Rock City had moved, but he did not know where. Now it seemed that they had moved to the Imperial City. Master Songmu's face was full of smiles. He came to Zhuan and said with a smile, I knew it. With your talent, it's not a problem for you to enter the top 100 in the Vitality Tower battle. Now that you've appeared in the Imperial City, you must be preparing to participate in the upcoming Battle of the 9 Counties, right? Master Songmu had moved to the Imperial City early, so he had not heard of Zhuan's terrifying achievements in the Vitality Tower battle. He only thought that Zhuan had entered the top 100 in the Vitality Tower battle. Zhuan smiled and nodded. He said, Old Songmu, why did the Arcane Guild in Broken Rock City move to the Imperial City? Aren't you all doing well in Broken Rock City? It's a long story. The headquarters of the Arcane Guild in the Imperial City summoned all of our branches back. As for what exactly happened, I'm not very sure. Master Songmu shook his head and said with some confusion. Old Songmu, it seems that you're doing well too. Your mental strength has broken through to the 4th level. Zhuan quickly noticed the 4 stars on Master Songmu's chest and said with a smile. It's just a lucky breakthrough. But with my talent, I'm afraid I can only stay at the level of the 4th level small success. On the other hand, when you were in Broken Rock City, your mental strength was already at the 3rd level large success. Now that almost 2 years have passed, I'm afraid you've already become a 4th level arcanist. Master Songmu stared at Zhuan with bright eyes. He knew that with Zhuan's mental strength talent, it was only a matter of time before he became a 4th level arcanist. Now that 2 years had passed, Zhuan's mental strength was likely to reach the 4th level. Zhuan smiled faintly and said coolly, more or less. I didn't misjudge you back then. Grandmaster Kuraki's face twitched. He was more than 40 years older than Zhuan, but Zhuan's spiritual energy cultivation was on par with his. This made Grandmaster Kuraki feel bitter. It seemed that he couldn't compare with a monster like Zhuan. Otherwise, it would be too much of a blow to his confidence. Hearing the conversation between Zhuan and Grandmaster Kuraki, Luo was shocked once again. What exactly is the background of this young master beside me? Not only was his aura enough to intimidate the 2 Ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators guarding the Appraiser Hall, but this rank 4 Arcana Master in front of him seemed to be so cordial towards this young man. Moreover, this young man seemed to be a rank 4 Arcana Master himself. Old man Songmu, the Appraisal Hall seems rather lively today. Do you know what's going on? Zhuan suddenly asked. Oh, are you talking about the auction for the Greater Limitless Sword Formation? That thing is indeed going to be auctioned today. Grandmaster Kuraki nodded. Earlier, I heard that the Greater Limitless Sword Formation is a rank 5 origin formation. A rank 5 origin formation is extremely precious. The Appraisal Hall is actually willing to auction it? Zhuan was slightly puzzled. The might of a rank 5 origin formation was extremely terrifying. It was much more powerful than a rank 4 origin formation. Normally, origin formations of this rank wouldn't be auctioned because they were too rare. This was also what Zhuan was puzzled about. Grandmaster Kuraki shook his head and said, the Greater Limitless Sword Formation is indeed a rank 5 origin formation, but it's a damaged rank 5 origin formation. It said that the Greater Limitless Sword Formation has a total of 5 small sword formations, and the 5 small sword formations are arranged in 5 different directions. However, the Greater Limitless Sword Formation that the Appraisal Hall is auctioning is missing a small sword formation. It's precisely because it's missing a small sword formation that the might of the Greater Limitless Sword Formation is greatly reduced. Although it's inferior to an ordinary rank 5 origin formation, It's still much stronger than most rank 4 origin formations. A damaged rank 5 origin formation? Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze slightly focused, and he was slightly excited in his heart. He had never seen a rank 5 origin formation, and he would be able to experience it this time. What? Zhuowen, could it be that you're interested in the greater limitless sword formation as well? Grandmaster Kuraki grinned. I'm indeed somewhat interested. Why don't we go to the 4th floor and take a look? Zhuowen smiled. I'm also preparing to head to the 4th floor of the appraisal hall, but I still need to wait for a few friends. Why don't we wait for a while? Grandmaster Kuraki nodded. Since they're your friends, there's no harm in waiting. Yuan didn't refuse. The two of them didn't wait for too long before a group of people walked over from the other side of the hall. Grandmaster Kuraki saw the group of people with a glance and hurriedly went over to greet them. When Zhuowen's gaze landed on the group of people, he was first stunned, and then he frowned slightly because he realized that he actually saw two familiar faces in the group. There were a total of 4 people in the group, 2 men and 2 women. Among them, the 2 women were none other than the cold-looking woman with the surname Huangfu and the ordinary-looking woman called Jing Yun that Zhuowen met when he first entered the appraisal hall. Standing beside the 2 women was an old man and a young man. One of them was dressed in a gray robe, and there was a gentle smile on the corner of his mouth. Zhuowen also knew this person. He was the president of the Broken Rock City's arcane guild, Master Kuya. The other person's age was similar to the cold-looking woman's. This person's hair was tied into a crown, and he was handsome and elegant. When he opened and closed his eyes, they shone with a sharp aura. This young man was handsome and elegant, and when he smiled, he was extremely good-looking. If it was in his previous life, he would definitely be an idol-level existence. At this moment, this young man's gaze was gentle as he looked at the cold-looking woman. His face was full of tenderness, and even a fool could tell that this young man probably liked this cold-looking woman. Unfortunately, the falling flowers were affectionate, but the flowing water was heartless. The woman with the surname Huangfu completely ignored this young man and treated him as air. As for the ordinary-looking woman standing beside the woman with the surname Huangfu, her gaze was firmly fixed on the young man. Perhaps she found that the young man's gaze was completely occupied by the woman with the surname Huangfu, so she was quite jealous and sulking at the side. Kuraki, you've come quite early. It seems that you've specially come to wait for us? Master Kuya looked at Master Kuraki, who had come over, and immediately gave him a bear hug. Master Kuya, actually, I've also just arrived. Master Kuraki smiled slightly, and at the same time, he cupped his hands towards the 3 people behind Master Kuya and said, I really didn't expect that even Miss Huangfu, young Master Feng, and Miss Jing Yun would also come. The woman with the surname Huangfu, the handsome young man, and Jing Yun also politely returned the greeting. After all, Master Kuraki was also a grade 4 arcanist. His status was not low, so they would naturally give him some face. As Master Kuraki spoke, he pulled Master Kuya and the others to Zhuowen and said, Master Kuya, Zhuowen has also come to the imperial capital. It's really you, Thun. When our arcane guild moved to the imperial capital, we wanted to bring you along, but unfortunately, you had already entered the Vitality Tower at that time. Since you've come to the imperial capital, it means that your results in the Vitality Tower battle are pretty good. Master Kuya rather enthusiastically patted Zhuowen's shoulder, and his eyes were full of gratification. Zhuowen's performance in Broken Rock City back then was extremely good, especially when he defeated the geniuses of Yeong City and Anding City for their Broken Rock City Arcane Guild. He had won a lot of face for their Arcane Guild, so Master Kuya naturally had a very good impression of Zhuowen. It's you? Suddenly, 2 voices spoke in unison behind Master Kuya. Master Kuya couldn't help but be stunned. He turned his head and said to the 2 people behind him, Do you know each other? The 2 people who spoke in unison were the women with the surname Huangfu and the name Jing Yun. However, the 2 women's expressions were not particularly good. Obviously, they were recalling the incident at the entrance of the Inspection Treasure Pavilion. I don't know each other. Maybe these 2 have mistaken me for someone else. Zhuowen smiled indifferently. He completely ignored the two women behind Master Kuya and continued to chat cheerfully with Master Kuraki. Zhuan couldn't be bothered to pay attention to these two women who felt good about themselves. Of course, he didn't want to have anything to do with them. Zhuan's disregard immediately made Jing Yun angry out of humiliation. She coldly shouted, "What an arrogant brat! Are you planning to escape by ignoring us? Coward, you're still pretending to be virtuous." The woman with the surname Huangfu's expression was somewhat unsightly. When had she ever been disregarded like this? Since she was young, she had always been the moon surrounded by the stars. Who dared to treat her with disdain? However, not only did the young man before her ignore her, he even ignored her twice. This caused a trace of anger to appear on the originally arrogant woman with the surname Huangfu's charming face. Perhaps sensing the abnormality of the woman with the surname Huangfu, the gentle-looking and dignified young man finally shifted his gaze away from her and landed on Zhuowen. The gentleness in his eyes was gradually replaced by coldness. "I'll give you a chance now. Come here, kneel down and apologize to Zixia. Otherwise, it's unlikely that you'll be able to leave the inspection treasure pavilion alive." The young man raised his head and puffed out his chest as he looked down at Zhuan. It was as if in his eyes, Zhuan was as insignificant as an ant. "Oh, you want me to go over, kneel down, and apologize?" Zhuan's words paused. Shortly after, he turned his head and stared at the arrogant young man with a cold smile on his face. Isn't this young man too full of himself? Zhuan didn't provoke him, yet he directly asked me to kneel down and apologize. Where did this young man get his confidence from? That's right. You only have one chance. Come here at once, kneel down and apologize. Zixia was frightened because of you just now, so you must bear the consequences. The young man remained arrogant as he spoke in a righteous tone. You're really out of your mind. Since you want to show off in front of Zixia, can you not act so retarded? Or do you think you're very handsome now? However, in my opinion, you're just a lunatic. If you want to show off in front of a beauty, you must first choose the right target. Once you choose the wrong one, the consequences will be severe. Chapter 634. Auction, what did you just say? The handsome young man's face darkened. Yun was too presumptuous. He dared to insult him in front of him. How could he not be angry? You're just a guy with a brain full of lust. Zhuan shook his head. He could not be bothered with this arrogant young man. The handsome young man finally could not take it anymore. He stomped his foot and a terrifying aura surged out. The gentleness on his face was replaced by murderous intent. Zhuan had completely angered him. Peak of the ultimate five-wheel emperor stage? Zhuan narrowed his eyes. He was quite surprised. This young man who looked like a playboy was actually not weak. He had reached the peak of the ultimate five-wheel emperor stage. It seemed that this person's background was not ordinary. Master Kuya's expression changed slightly. With a wave of his sleeve, a terrifying mental energy shot out and filled the space between the young man and Zhuowen. The handsome young man, who originally had an imposing aura, had a slight change in expression. His aura was also pulled back under the pressure of the mental energy. Master Kuya, what do you mean? The young man stared at Master Kuya with fear and said coldly. After all, Master Kuya was once the president of the Arcane Guild branch in Broken Rock City. Now that he had returned to the headquarters, his status had risen. His status was much higher than most arcanists. Moreover, Master Kuya's mind power had reached the peak of the 4th grade. He was only one step away from becoming a legendary 5th grade arcanist. Even the power behind the handsome young man would not offend Master Kuya too much over such a trivial matter. Master Kuya, do you have to interfere in this matter? Although your status in the Arcane Guild is not low, our Feng family is not an ordinary power. There is no benefit in offending us. The young man narrowed his eyes and said coldly. Master Kuya shook his head and said indifferently, Young Master Feng, Zhuan is this old man's junior. I hope you can give this old man some face. The young man's face turned ugly. He knew that if Master Kuya really interfered, he would not have the chance to touch Zhuan. The woman surnamed Huangfu couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise when she saw Master Kuya protecting Zhuan. She knew that Master Kuya was willing to offend the young man surnamed Feng to protect Zhuan. Clearly, Zhuan was very important to him. Then I'll give Master Kuya face and spare your life today. However, the Imperial City is not a particularly safe place. Others can protect you for a while, but they can't protect you forever. In the future, you'd better be careful in the Imperial City. Otherwise, you won't even know if you lose your life. The young man with the family name Feng snorted coldly and slowly withdrew the aura that erupted from his body. He indifferently glanced at Zhuan, and his gaze turned much colder. There was even a trace of murderous intent. Zhuan's eyes slowly narrowed, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This youth surnamed Feng was clearly threatening him, but Zhuan was not afraid. This person's cultivation had reached the peak of the ultimate emperor realm, and he was not weak. Unfortunately, Zhuan was not someone to be trifled with either. Let's go. The auction on the 4th floor of the appraiser hall is about to begin. This time, besides the infinite sword formation, there are still many good things for sale. Seeing that the young man surnamed Feng had stopped attacking, Master Kuya hurriedly laughed and said with a smile. The young man surnamed Feng snorted coldly and took the lead to walk towards the 4th floor of the appraiser hall. Then, Huangfu Zixia and Jing Yun followed closely behind and ascended to the appraiser hall. Zhuan. These 3 people have extraordinary identities. Among them, the man is a direct descendant of the Feng family, one of the 7 great families of the Imperial City. His name is Feng Xiang. The woman with the cold expression is a member of the Imperial family. Her name is Huangfu Zixia, and she is the direct disciple of an elder in the Arcane Guild's headquarters. Her talent is extremely terrifying, and she is the focus of the guild's nurturing. As for Jing Yun, who is by Huangfu Zixia's side, she is also a member of the Imperial City. However, she isn't of the Imperial family's bloodline, but the descendant of a high official and noble in the Imperial City. Although her status can't compare to the Imperial family and the Feng family, she can still be considered to have some influence in the Imperial City. At this moment, Master Kuya's expression became extremely solemn. He was very clear about the backgrounds of those 3 people from before. On the other hand, Zhuan had no background. If he offended the 3 of them, then Zhuan would undoubtedly suffer a great loss. Zhuan nodded when he heard this. He didn't expect that those 3 people had such prominent identities, especially Huangfu Zixia. Not only was she a member of the Imperial family, but she was also the direct disciple of an elder in the Imperial City's Arcane Guild. Because the members of the Arcane Guild were all gathered in the Imperial City, the Arcane Guild in the Imperial City was undoubtedly the only and largest arcane guild in the entire Qin Xian Empire. The cultivation of the elders in the Arcane Guild was unfathomable. It wasn't so easy to become the direct disciple of an elder in the Arcane Guild. If one's talent wasn't outstanding, then it would be impossible to be chosen by those picky elders. Let's go. The 4th floor isn't just auctioning the ultimate sword formation this time. There are other treasures being auctioned as well. Let's go up as well. After Master Kuya finished speaking, he led Song Mu and Zhuowen up the stairs. The stairs of the appraiser hall were in a roundabout manner, like a whirlwind that spiraled upwards. Not long after, Master Kuya and the other 2 ascended to the 4th floor of the appraiser hall. It was a space slightly smaller than the 1st floor. There was a circle of seating platforms around it. At this moment, the seating platforms were already filled with a large number of people. Above the seating platforms were rows of private rooms. There were many figures inside, and there should be quite a number of people seated there. In the middle of the seating area, there was a huge platform. At this moment, an old man in a black robe with sharp eyes stood quietly on the platform. This old man's body faintly emitted a terrifying aura. He should not be a weakling. As soon as Master Kuya and the other 2 entered the 4th floor, a slender and elegant maidservant welcomed them with a bright smile. Especially when she saw the 4 stars on Master Kuya and Master Tsong Mu's chests, the smile on her face became even more radiant. "My lords, please enter the VIP seats." The maidservant was extremely enthusiastic. She hurriedly invited Master Kuya into one of the private rooms above the seating platforms. Among the three of them, there were 2 Grade 4 Arcana Masters. Their statuses were noble, and she couldn't afford to neglect them. The private room was quite spacious. It could easily accommodate 20 people. At this moment, there were still a few people standing in the private room. They were Feng Xiang, Huangfu Zixia, and Jing Yun, who had arrived earlier than Master Kuya and the other 2. Perhaps they had noticed the movement of the private room's door, but the 3 of them turned around and saw Master Kuya and the other 2. After casually greeting them, their gazes were fixed on the high platform in the middle of the seating platforms below. As for Jun, he was completely ignored by them. In Feng Xiang's opinion, Yun was already a dead man. As soon as this auction ended, he would definitely capture Juan alive and make him suffer a fate worse than death. Everyone in the private room took their seats. Not long after, the long-robed old man on the high platform below finally opened his mouth and said in a clear voice, "Thank you for coming to the appraiser hall's auction this time." Although this old man knows the purpose of everyone's visit, the auction should be done one by one. The good things should naturally be left for the finale. This old man won't waste any more words. Let's start with the first treasure. As he spoke, the old man waved his hand. A groove immediately appeared on the high platform below his feet. Soon after, a black brocade box slowly floated up and landed in the old man's palm. Patter! The old man immediately opened the brocade box. A fragrance similar to orchids and musk wafted out, causing the expressions of many people on the high platform to change. Quietly lying inside the brocade box was an oval-shaped fruit. The strange thing was that the surface of the fruit was surrounded by white foam. The old man looked around and said indifferently, "Grade 4 spirit herb, snake saliva fruit. It's a fruit born from the saliva of a 1,000-year-old snake demon. It's quite effective for cultivators. The starting price is 10 mid-grade spirit stones. The auction begins now." Many people on the high platform became restless. It was obvious that the snake saliva fruit was quite attractive to them. 15 mid-grade spirit stones. 20 mid-grade spirit stones. Bids rose and fell on the high platform. Soon, the price of the snake saliva fruit was raised to 80 mid-grade spirit stones. It was won by an Ultimate Emperor Realm 3-wheeled cultivator on the high platform below. That cultivator was quite cautious. After bidding for the snake saliva fruit, he quietly left his seat, intending to leave the appraiser hall. However, the moment that cultivator left, a few cultivators on the high platform below followed closely behind him. It was likely that the cultivator was in a bad situation. Of course, the appraiser hall wouldn't care about this kind of thing. The appraiser hall only forbade fighting within the hall. However, once outside the appraiser hall wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Although the imperial capital was a famous big city in the Qing Xin Empire, it was far more chaotic than other places. There were too many martial artists gathered here. Friction and brawls were a common occurrence. Even robberies were common occurrences. Although the imperial guards were in charge of the imperial capital was too big. The imperial guards couldn't cover every corner. This was also the reason why other cultivators in the imperial capital took advantage of the situation and caused chaos. Juan naturally saw the situation below, but he shook his head and ignored it. He wouldn't meddle in the fate of that cultivator. An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin. If one wanted to obtain a treasure, one had to have the strength to protect it. Otherwise, it would only be an illusion in the end. The auction continued in an orderly manner. The old man on the high platform continuously took out one item after another, causing a commotion on the high platform. The items were also auctioned off one after another. The next item to be auctioned is a little special. Everyone, please wait and see. Suddenly, the old man said in a solemn voice, causing the eyes of many people on the high platform to light up. If the old man, who had always been as calm as water, was so serious, then the item to be auctioned this time must be extraordinary. Below the high platform, a large groove appeared once again. Soon after, a transparent glass box half the height of a person slowly floated up and finally appeared above the high platform. At the same time, the temperature around the high platform rose sharply. It was like a furnace, causing many cultivators to frown. What a terrifying temperature! What exactly is this thing? Chapter 635. Firebird Plume Feather Whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh. Countless gazes gathered on the high platform. A fiery red plume feather lay quietly in the glass box beside the elder. The color of the flame was exceptionally dazzling. What was even more frightening was that the terrifying temperature from earlier had come from this plume feather. Although the temperature was far from the earth fire, it was still not to be underestimated. This is a plume feather from the ancient demonic beast, the firebird. This plume feather was accidentally obtained by an expert of our pavilion in a ruin. Although the firebird cannot be compared to the ancient divine beast, the phoenix, its body contains a trace of the phoenix bloodline. The plume feather on its body is also not to be underestimated. The starting price of the firebird plume feather is 50 mid-grade spirit stones. With a shake of his sleeve, the elder gently patted the glass box beside him. His clear voice reverberated around the entire seating area. So it is the firebird plume feather. I thought it was the phoenix plume feather. Although the firebird has the phoenix bloodline in its body, it is a pity that the bloodline is too rare. It was not a powerful demonic beast in the ancient era. The plume feather on its body is not of much use. If it was the phoenix plume feather, there would be demand for it. However, forget about the firebird plume feather. Moreover, the starting price is too high. A firebird plume feather is simply not worth this price. The originally expectant crowd shook their heads in disappointment after hearing the elder's introduction. It was obvious that the firebird plume feather was not of much use to them. The elder also sensed the deep feelings of the surrounding cultivators, and his old face was a little embarrassed. The firebird plume feather was indeed not of much use to cultivators. Only arcana masters could use the firebird plume feather to refine yuan crystals. When arcana masters refined yuan crystals, there was a chance of failure. There was only one firebird plume feather, and its starting price was so high that it instantly caused some of the arcana masters who wanted to bid for it to give up. In the private room, Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he stared straight at the firebird's tail feather on the high platform. When the firebird's tail feather had appeared, the acupuncture points in his body that had been opened by the great Nirvana sun had actually faintly trembled. This was a trembling of excitement. Could it be that this firebird's plume feather is beneficial to the cultivation of great sun Nirvana? Feeling the acupoints in his body trembling, Yuan narrowed his eyes. He knew that this firebird plume feather was definitely related to the Nirvana of the great sun. I must obtain this firebird's plume feather. Zhuan muttered to himself as he clenched his fist. The moment the old man's words sounded, not a single person in the entire seating area actually opened their mouths to bid. The surroundings appeared to be extremely quiet, to the point that one could hear a pin drop. This caused the old man to be rather embarrassed, and a helpless expression appeared on his old face. This firebird plume feather was indeed obtained by an expert in their pavilion, but that expert had entrusted it to them for auction. A portion of the spirit stones from the auction would be given to that expert. Of course, if the price of the firebird plume feather had been a little lower, there might have been quite a few arcana masters interested in buying it. However, that expert was very stubborn and insisted on setting the starting price at 50 mid-grade spirit stones. With such a high starting price, it was only natural that fewer people would buy it. After waiting for a while, the old man saw that no one had opened their mouths and sighed softly. Just as he was about to withdraw the firebird plume feather, a voice suddenly rang out. 50 mid-grade spirit stones, I'll take this firebird plume feather. As soon as these words were spoken, a group of people on the seating area immediately followed the sound of the voice. Soon after, they discovered that the owner of the voice had come from the box at the very top. At the window of the box was a handsome and graceful young man. The corners of his mouth were curled upwards, and his gaze was gentle. This person was Feng Xiang. Who is this person? This firebird plume feather is completely useless. Is he going to buy it as an ornament? That person is Feng Xiang, a direct descendant of the Feng clan. In the Feng clan, he can be considered an outstanding genius. You'd better keep your voice down. The Feng clan is not to be trifled with. So it's someone from the Feng clan. With the Feng clan's background, a mere 50 mid-grade spirit stones is really a small amount. Sitting on the stage, someone immediately recognized Feng Xiang. The others also revealed expressions of relief. With the Feng clan's background, even if they spent 50 mid-grade spirit stones to buy something useless, they probably wouldn't even frown. This was the benefit of a large clan. They had a deep background. At this moment, within the box, Feng Xiang was elegant and valiant. His gaze was gentle as he stared at Huangfu Zixia. He gently said, "Zixia, I'll buy this firebird plume feather for you. When I go back and make it into a hairpin, I'll personally give it to you. What do you think?" As soon as Feng Xiang's words came out, Zhuowen, who was beside him, immediately shook his head. This was indeed a prodigal son. Spending 50 mid-grade spirit stones to buy the firebird plume feather was actually just to make it into a hairpin as a gift. Zhuowen didn't know what to say. At this moment, Jing Yun, who was beside Huangfu Zixia, had an expression of envy on her face. Actually, she'd always liked Feng Xiang in her heart. Especially the unique temperament on Feng Xiang's body and his handsome and valiant appearance. All of these had deeply attracted Jing Yun. Unfortunately, Feng Xiang didn't take a fancy to Jing Yun at all. From the beginning until the end, his gaze had been placed on Huangfu Zixia. He'd even spent 50 mid-grade spirit stones to buy the firebird plume feather for Huangfu Zixia with the sole purpose of making it into a hairpin as a gift for Huangfu Zixia. However, Huangfu Zixia merely glanced coldly at Feng Xiang and said indifferently, "Young Master Feng, Zixia appreciates your good intentions. I don't need this firebird plume feather. If young Master Feng wants to give it to someone, then give it to Jing Yun." Feng Xiang's face slightly stiffened when he heard this. He rubbed his head and could only force a smile. "Since Zixia doesn't like it, then I won't give it to you." As he spoke, Feng Xiang's gaze suddenly turned towards Jing Yun, who was beside Huangfu Zixia, and his gaze was still gentle as he said, "Then Jing Yun, do you want this firebird plume feather? If you want it, I can also make it into a hairpin for you." In the Arcane Arts Guild, Huangfu Zixia and Jing Yun had the best relationship. Feng Xiang obviously intended to pursue Huangfu Zixia, so naturally he had to build a good relationship with Jing Yun. Jing Yun was stunned, and immediately a trace of shyness appeared on her face. She lowered her head and said softly, "Since young Master Feng is so polite, Jing Yun naturally won't refuse. Don't worry, this firebird plume feather will definitely suit you very well. It will definitely look good on you." Feng Xiang smiled faintly. If young Master Feng says it looks good, then it will definitely look good. Jing Yun had the posture of a little girl as she said shyly. Looking at Jing Yun's shy posture, Zhuowen's face twitched. What a stupid woman. Feng Xiang's attitude was so perfunctory, yet she couldn't see through it. She thought that Feng Xiang was good to her. Shaking his head, Zhuowen no longer paid attention to Jing Yun and Feng Xiang, and said loudly, 55 mid-grade spirit stones." As soon as the words came out, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became silent. The smile on Feng Xiang's face stiffened, and his eyes turned slightly, staring coldly at the young man with the green coffin on his back. The other people in the room also looked at Zhuowen. They also didn't expect that Zhuowen would actually bid against Feng Xiang. Was he planning to go against Feng Xiang? Someone actually bid again. I really don't know what he's thinking. This firebird plume feather isn't worth this price. The person who bid seems to be in the same room as Feng Xiang. Could it be that the two of them know each other? Sitting on the stage, many people looked at the room above in surprise, because they found that the two bidding voices came from the same room. "How dare you compete with me?" Feng Xiang's eyes were extremely cold as he stared straight at Chun. "Why wouldn't I dare? Could it be that after you bid, others can't bid? Or is this appraisal hall opened by your Feng family?" Jun slowly turned his head, glanced indifferently at Feng Xiang, and spoke without any courtesy. Yuan, you little bastard, what qualifications do you have to compete with Big Brother Feng? Jing Yun coldly glared at Yuan. The firebird plume feather was given to her by Feng Xiang, and this Yuan actually dared to bid. Otherwise, she would fly into a rage out of humiliation. Qualifications are not given by you. This bidding is a fair competition. If Feng Xiang wants this firebird plume feather, he can bid against me. You don't have to bark like a dog. Zhuan coldly replied. Jing Yun was furious. She originally wanted to go up and teach Zhuowen a lesson, but when she recalled the terrifying pressure that Zhuowen released at the entrance of the appraisal hall, she stopped in her tracks. Her expression was uncertain. Feng Xiang frowned. Originally, he wanted to give this firebird plume feather to Huangfu Zixia. Unfortunately, Huangfu Zixia didn't accept it, so his desire to bid for this firebird plume feather was not high. However, Zhuowen's bid still made Feng Xiang extremely angry. This despicable guy who came out of nowhere actually dared to contradict him time and time again. He didn't want to show weakness because of this. 100 mid-grade spirit stones. Feng Xiang coldly snorted. As soon as these words came out, the people sitting on the stage immediately went into an uproar. This firebird plume feather that no one was interested in actually had someone offer 100 mid-grade spirit stones. This was far beyond the value of the firebird plume feather itself. 101. Zhuowen said indifferently. Feng Xiang's pupils constricted as he coldly shouted again. 200 mid-grade spirit stones. 201. 300 mid-grade spirit stones. 301. Every time Feng Xiang increased the price, Zhuan would add one more spirit stone to the original price. In the end, the price of the firebird plume feather was forcefully raised by the two of them to 900 mid-grade spirit stones. 901 mid-grade spirit stones. Zhuan continued to speak indifferently, his voice as calm as an ancient well. Instantly, the other people in the room all looked at Zhuowen with astonished gazes. They did not expect that Zhuowen would actually be so wealthy. Even Huangfu Zixia, who had an icy cold expression, could not help but take another look at Zhuowen. Feng Xiang's eyes narrowed as he secretly thought that Zhuan was an idiot. This time, he planned to give up after increasing the price to 1,000 spirit stones. After all, the firebird plume feather was only a gift to Jing Yun, so he didn't particularly care about it. This time, Feng Xiang's goal of increasing the price to 1,000 spirit stones was to make the young man in front of him bleed. 1,000 mid-grade spirit stones. As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Xiang's gaze converged on Zhuowen, full of ridicule and provocation. He knew that Zhuowen would definitely follow, and when the time came, he would withdraw in time, and this Zhuowen would definitely bleed. Chapter 636. A snowy day at this moment, the old man on the high platform had an excited expression on his face. Originally, he did not have much hope for the firebird plume feather, but he did not expect Feng Xiang and Zhuowen to raise the price to 1,000 spiritual stones. This was already considered a sky-high price. Is there anyone else who wants to raise the price? This firebird plume feather is quite effective. The old man revealed a sly smile as he looked around the platform, hoping that someone would raise the price again. Of course, the old man was basically ignored by everyone. No one had bought the firebird plume feather for 50 medium spiritual stones. Now that the price had been raised to 1,000 spiritual stones, how could anyone raise the price? However, the gazes of everyone on the viewing platform were focused on Zhuowen's private room. The one who had raised the price of the firebird plume feather to such a high level was the two people in this private room. The one who wanted to bid was the other person in this private room. At this moment, Zhuowen indifferently glanced at the provocative Feng Xiang. His face darkened as he coldly said, 1,001 mid-grade spirit stones. If you continue to raise the price, then I won't follow. I'll let you have this firebird feather so that you can make it into a hairpin and give it to someone. After he finished speaking, Zhuowen deliberately glanced at Jing Yun, who was behind Feng Xiang. At this moment, Jing Yun's eyes were filled with anticipation. Feng Xiang had raised the price of the firebird plume feather to more than 1,000 spiritual stones, which made her happy. Now, she was very much looking forward to Feng Xiang continuing to raise the price for her. Zhuo Wen narrowed his eyes. Zhuo Wen's words could be said to be poisonous. It was obvious that he was trying to trap Feng Xiang. If Feng Xiang continued to increase the price, it would not be worth it to obtain the Firebird's plume feather. If he did not increase the price, it would probably cause Jing Yun's hopes to be dashed. This was clearly an open scheme against Feng Xiang. Jin is not simple. Song Mu and Kuya, who were standing to the side, looked at each other. Zhuo Wen's words had hit the nail on the head. Feng Xiang could neither advance nor retreat. Feeling Jing Yun's expectant gaze, Feng Xiang narrowed his eyes and said coldly, The Firebird plume feather is only worth 50 mid-grade spirit stones. I don't need to go crazy with you. If you want it, then take it. I won't be like an idiot and spend over 1,000 spirit stones to buy it. It seems that all your promises are bullshit. You just said that you would make the Firebird's plume feather into a hairpin as a gift, but now you choose to give up the Firebird's plume feather in front of others. You really are a two-faced person. In my opinion, your promise isn't even worth shit. Zhuo Wen said with a face full of ridicule. Bastard. Watch your mouth. Big Brother Feng is not the kind of person you say he is. You were the one who insisted on competing with Big Brother Feng. If it wasn't for you, Big Brother Feng would have gotten this Firebird's plume feather long ago. Although Jing Yun's face was a little gloomy, when she saw Zhuo Wen mocking Feng Xiang, she immediately pointed the spearhead at Zhuo Wen. Her tone wasn't polite at all, and she sided with Feng Xiang. You know, why do we need to lower ourselves to his level? There are still a lot of things to be auctioned. When the time comes, I will buy another one for you. Feng Xiang extended his hand to stop Jing Yun. The gaze he used to look at Zhuo Wen became increasingly sinister and cold. Zhuo Wen, this little bastard, had repeatedly disobeyed him and had long since aroused Feng Xiang's killing intent. He had already decided that after this auction ended, he would make this little bastard disappear from this world forever. The bidding between Zhuo Wen and Feng Xiang was just a small disturbance. The auction continued in an orderly manner. Treasures were auctioned off one by one. During this time, Feng Xiang kept his promise and bought another treasure for Jing Yun. Because of this, Jing Yun's face was filled with sweetness. She looked at Feng Xiang with a burning gaze. The next item is quite precious. Let's wait and see. Suddenly, the old man on the high platform shouted again, attracting the attention of the audience. A groove appeared on the high platform. Then, a crystal-clear longsword appeared in the old man's hand. A faint chill pervaded the entire high platform. This sword is called Ice Frost Heaven. It is a top Earth-rank spiritual treasure. It was forged from the Earth-rank Ice Frost Heaven. With a swing, it can create a terrifying Ice Frost Heaven that revolves around the body. Its power is extremely terrifying. Ordinary earth fire can't even break through the Ice Frost Heaven's defense. The old man's indifferent voice slowly sounded. When the sword appeared, the audience on the high platform looked at it with burning eyes. They didn't expect the Ice Frost Heaven to be a top Earth-rank spiritual treasure. This kind of spiritual treasure was rare. Feeling the burning eyes of the audience, the old man looked proud. He knew that the Ice Frost Heaven would be auctioned for a good price. The starting price is 100 medium spiritual stones. Each bid must be at least 10 spiritual stones. When the old man finished speaking, many people on the high platform couldn't wait to bid. 150 spiritual stones. 200 spiritual stones. 300 spiritual stones. The price quickly rose to 800 spiritual stones. The speed at which it rose made people speechless. It seemed that this top Earth-rank spiritual treasure was really popular. Within the private room, Huangfu Zixia, who originally had an ice-cold expression, revealed a trace of desire when she saw the ice and snow. Huangfu Zixia was originally an ice-cold woman. No matter if it was her appearance or personality, she was like a world of ice and snow. She was extremely cold and unapproachable. This Ice Frost Heaven was extremely compatible with her. It was no wonder that Huangfu Zixia was moved. Feng Xiang's attention had always been on Huangfu Zixia. When he saw Huangfu Zixia's face reveal interest, His eyes immediately revealed joy. He knew that the time for him to perform had arrived. Xia, if you want this ice frost heaven, how about I bid for it for you? Feng Xiang said eagerly. No need. I'll bid for it myself. Huangfu Xia replied coldly. Then she opened her cherry lips and said in a voice as cold as ice, 1,000 spiritual stones. Feng Xiang's face was embarrassed. He could only smile embarrassedly. However, he was a little angry in his heart. He thought to himself, what an arrogant woman. However, the more arrogant you are, the more I, Feng Xiang, want to get you. Thinking of the scene of such an ice-cold yet beautiful woman falling under his crotch, a perverted smile appeared on Feng Xiang's handsome face. The bidding continued. At this moment, the price had already risen to 2,000 spirit stones. Huangfu Xia, who was originally still bidding, frowned slightly. She didn't have enough spirit stones on her. She only had 2,500 spirit stones on her. Although Huangfu Xia was a member of the imperial family, she didn't bring many spiritual stones with her this time. Clenching her teeth, Huangfu Xia bid again. 2,500 spiritual stones. Instantly, the entire seating area became quiet. Everyone's gazes converged on the box where Huangfu Xia was. This person had suddenly raised the price of the ice frost heaven from 2,000 to 2,500, so it naturally attracted everyone's attention. It's that box again. Looks like the person in that box isn't simple. Although the ice frost heaven isn't bad, it's only worth around 2,000 spiritual stones. There's no need to continue bidding. After Huangfu Xia shouted out the price, many people in the seating area quieted down. The price of 2,500 spiritual stones was too high. There was no need to waste it on this spiritual treasure. Looking at the seating area that had suddenly quieted down, Huangfu Xia let out a light breath. The corners of her mouth revealed a faint smile. This ice frost heaven was to her liking. Moreover, the range of the ice frost heaven released when she waved it could envelop her and form a defense. It was the most suitable for an arcana master like her. Xia, congratulations, you've obtained the spiritual treasure you like. Feng Xiang's face revealed a gentle smile, giving people a feeling of being bathed in a spring breeze. The corners of Huangfu Xia's mouth rose. She really did like the ice frost heaven. Otherwise, she wouldn't have spent all her savings to bid for this spiritual treasure. 2,501 spirit stones. A calm voice slowly rang out, instantly causing the smiles on Huangfu Xia's and Feng Xiang's faces to freeze. Huangfu Xia's long, shapely eyebrows were tightly knitted. Her gaze was ice-cold as she stared at the young man who was sitting to the side with his legs crossed and a green coffin on his back. She knew that this young man was purely causing trouble at this moment. This caused Huangfu Xia to be filled with disgust toward Jun. The smile on Feng Xiang's face also faded a lot. His gaze was cold as he stared at Jun. He also knew that Jun was simply causing trouble. This ice frost heaven doesn't seem to be of any use to you, right? Why are you bidding? Or are you purely causing trouble? Feng Xiang said indifferently. What? You're not even allowing me to bid? Is it wrong for me to bid fairly? Jun still crossed his legs and said coldly. Feng Xiang coldly snorted. Soon after, he said to Huangfu Xia, Xia, if you want this ice frost heaven, I can bid for it for you. How about it? Huangfu Xia's charming face was slightly hesitant. She really did like the ice frost heaven. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough spiritual stones. After hesitating for a moment, she finally nodded. Feng Xiang's face was filled with joy. At this moment, it was finally time for him to perform. It had to be said that Zhuowen's actions could be considered as giving him a chance to perform. 3,000 spirit stones. Feng Xiang shouted in high spirits. 3,001 spirit stones. Zhuowen continued. 4,000 spiritual stones. Feng Xiang frowned slightly. He didn't expect Zhuowen to actually have so many spiritual stones on him. Thus, he added another 1,000. 4,001 spiritual stones. The two of them competed with each other. Very quickly, the price rose to 8,000 spiritual stones. This price completely caused a stir among the people on the viewing platform. 9,000 spiritual stones. Feng Xiang's face became extremely unsightly as he coldly shouted. At this moment, Feng Xiang had the intention to kill someone. This brat in front of him was too hateful. He actually forcibly raised the price of the ice frost heaven to 9,000 spiritual stones. This was almost the limit of the spiritual stones he had on him. 9,001 spirit stones, Zhuowen said in a calm voice. The veins on Feng Xiang's forehead bulged. He crushed the armrest beside him. His gaze was fixed on Zhuowen as he said word by word, 10,000 spiritual stones. If you can continue to bid, then I don't want this ice frost heaven. I'll give it to you. Young Master Feng is indeed a member of the Feng family. Your wealth is indeed not low. I'll give you face and stop competing. You can have this ice frost heaven. Chapter 637. Grandmaster Flame. According to the market price, the price of a top-grade Earth-rank spirit treasure should be around 2,000 spirit stones, and because of the Earth-rank cold energy contained within the ice sky cold sky, its price would be slightly higher, but it wouldn't exceed 2,500 spirit stones. But now, the price of the ice sky cold sky had been forcefully raised to 10,000 spirit stones. This was absolutely a sky-high price, and the gazes of many people on the platform became extremely strange. At this moment, the old man on the platform was smiling crookedly. The price of the ice sky cold sky had instantly quadrupled, and he was able to obtain an extremely generous commission from it. When he thought up to here, the old man couldn't help but have a good impression of Zhuowen who was bidding. At this moment, within the room, Feng Xiang's expression was extremely unsightly. Because of buying the ice sky cold sky this time, he'd practically used up almost a quarter of his savings, and his heart faintly ached. Although the Feng family was large and he could be considered a rather famous genius of the Feng family, he didn't possess that many spirit stones on him. After all, the Feng family was so large and there were even more geniuses, so the average amount of spirit stones would naturally not be too much. Feng Xiang naturally wouldn't express the thoughts in his heart on his face. His expression was still indifferent, and his gaze was gentle. In front of Huangfu Zixia, he appeared extremely calm, as if he didn't care about these 10,000 spirit stones at all. After a short while, the ice sky cold sky was brought up by a slender and elegant attendant. After receiving the ice sky cold sky, the smile on the corners of Feng Xiang's mouth gradually became wider, and he passed it over to Huangfu Zixia. Zixia, I'll give this ice sky cold sky to you, don't refuse. Feng Xiang's expression was warm, and he smiled warmly as he spoke. Then thank you, young Master Feng. Huangfu Zixia lightly opened her cherry lips, and the icy expression on her face slightly faded. She gracefully bowed, then received the ice sky cold sky and waved the sword in her jade-like hand. Instantly, cold energy was awe-inspiring, and coldness suffused the air, causing the temperature of the entire room to drop extremely. As expected of a spirit treasure made from earth-rank cold energy, the ice sky cold sky is able to release such terrifying coldness just by waving it. Zixia, this ice sky cold sky is truly too compatible with you. Feng Xiang couldn't help but praise. Young Master Feng, Zixia owes you a favor this time. Huangfu Zixia's pretty face revealed a touch of joy. She flicked her right hand, and the long sword immediately turned into a stream of light and entered the spirit ring on her finger. The smile on Feng Xiang's face gradually deepened. He knew that this was a pretty good start. Since Huangfu Zixia had already accepted his first gift, she would definitely accept a second one in the future. At that time, this woman would definitely be conquered by him. The auction continued to heat up. One item after another was bought by the numerous cultivators on the stage. For a time, the entire stage was filled with joy and sorrow. Finally, the old man on the stage became extremely solemn, and his gaze also became serious. The auction is about to come to an end. The next item is the finale of this auction. I'm sure that most of the guests who have come to participate in this auction are here for this item. The old man's voice was solemn and dignified, instantly drawing everyone's interest. Everyone stared at the platform with burning gazes. Just as the old man had said, the majority of the people here had come for the final item. Suddenly, the old man's right hand turned into a claw and fiercely clawed at his feet. A terrifying power erupted, and in an instant, the huge platform was shattered by the old man's power. The platform shattered, and from the empty space below, streaks of soul-stirring cold light swept out. The sound of metal clashing resounded around the entire platform. Everyone focused their gazes and discovered that the streaks of cold light were actually cold long swords. Moreover, the aura of each of the long swords was extremely strong. They formed a rather large sword array above the platform. If one was attentive, they would discover that this huge sword array was divided into 5 positions. 4 of the positions had a small sword array, and the remaining position was empty for some unknown reason. Ultimate sword array. On the stage, everyone's gazes were focused on this huge sword array. Their gazes were filled with burning gazes. This was a 5th grade origin array. Although it was not as powerful as an ordinary 5th grade origin array because it was missing a small sword array, it was definitely much more powerful than an ordinary 4th grade origin array. This sword array is known as the ultimate sword array. I'm sure everyone has heard of it before. The ultimate sword array is a 5th grade origin array. Originally, a 5th grade origin array was extremely precious, and it was impossible for our appraiser hall to auction it off. However, as everyone can see, this sword array is incomplete. The greater everlasting sword formation is formed from 5 small sword formations. The 5 small sword formations form this greater everlasting sword formation with boundless might. Unfortunately, this sword formation just so happens to be missing a small sword formation, causing its might to greatly decrease. However, its might still far surpasses a grade 4 origin formation. This origin array might not be of much use to a 5th grade Arcana Master, but it's extremely useful to a 4th grade Arcana Master. Although a 4th grade Arcana Master is unable to unleash its full power, the power it can unleash still surpasses that of many 4th grade origin arrays. I'm sure many masters want to obtain this sword array. At this point, the breathing of many Arcana Masters became hurried. It was precisely because the appraiser hall was auctioning the ultimate sword array that most of the Arcana Masters gathered here. Moreover, most of them were 4th grade Arcana Masters. This was also the reason why Master Tsang Mu and Master Ku Ya came to the appraiser hall together. Inside the box, Master Tsang Mu, Master Ku Ya, and Huangfu Zixia's eyes were filled with a trace of fervor. This ultimate sword array was too important to a 4th grade Arcana Master. Its power surpassing that of a 4th grade origin array was enough to greatly increase their strength. Zhuowen's eyes flickered and his brows furrowed. He could faintly feel that the sword array in the ultimate sword array's missing position had a trace of compatibility with the ultimate sword aura on his body. Moreover, the moment the ultimate sword array appeared, one could clearly feel that the ultimate sword aura in his spiritual ring actually let out a sword cry. It was extremely excited. Could it be that the small sword formation that was missing from the greater limitless sword formation was really the limitless sword aura? Feeling the strange movement of the limitless sword aura in the spirit ring, Zhuowen's heart thumped wildly. The greater limitless sword formation was a genuine Tier 5 origin array. Even if it was incomplete now, its power was far beyond an ordinary Tier 4 origin array. If it was a complete greater limitless sword formation, its power would reach the terrifying power of a genuine Tier 5 origin array. Even if Zhuowen met Elder Shi of the Grand Family again, he was confident that he could kill him. I must obtain this ultimate sword array. Squinting his eyes, Zhuowen secretly made up his mind. Right now, he had 50,000 spiritual stones on him, so he was qualified to compete for this ultimate sword array. No matter how much it cost, Zhuowen had to obtain this ultimate sword array. Because he possessed the ultimate sword aura, he had the possibility of repairing the ultimate sword array. Once it was repaired, it would be a genuine 5th grade origin array. It would be an explosive increase to Zhuowen's strength. I won't waste any more words. Let's start the bidding now. The ultimate sword array's base price is 5,000 spiritual stones. Each bid must not be less than 1,000 spiritual stones. As soon as the old man finished speaking, many people on the stage sucked in a breath of cold air. Just the base price was 5,000 spiritual stones. Such a terrifying price was enough to make most of the people on the stage give up. 6,000 spiritual stones. After a moment of silence, someone in a private room above the stage finally called out a price. Everyone on the stage shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They knew that this ultimate sword array was not something they could compete for. The only people who could afford this sword array were the big shots in the VIP seats above. 7,000 spiritual stones. Another private room called out. 8,000 spiritual stones. Inside the box, Master Kuya also yelled out. His eyes were filled with a burning desire. As for Master Kuraki, he shook his head helplessly. He only had 8,000 spiritual stones on him, so he didn't have the ability to bid at all. He could only watch others bid. 10,000 spiritual stones. The bidding price rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had risen to 20,000 spiritual stones. In the private room, Master Kuya smiled bitterly. He didn't continue bidding. Although he had some status in the Arcane Guild, he didn't have many spiritual stones on him. 20,000 spiritual stones was his limit. Young Master Feng, how many spiritual stones do you have? At this moment, Huangfu Zixia suddenly looked at Feng Xiang and asked. When Feng Xiang heard this, the corners of his mouth rose. He quickly smiled and said, I still have 30,000 spiritual stones. If Zixia wants to bid, I'll give them all to you. You don't have to give them to me. You just need to lend them to me. When this auction is over, I'll return them to you, Huangfu Zixia replied faintly. I'm honored. The smile on Feng Xiang's face widened as he said repeatedly, 25,000 spiritual stones. Huangfu Zixia nodded and opened her cherry lips slightly. Her clear voice was heard again, causing the surrounding private rooms to fall silent. Huangfu Zixia's courage to raise 5,000 spiritual stones in one go was quite impressive. Many people were stunned. 26,000 spiritual stones. Suddenly, an aged voice came from the private room opposite them. Huangfu Zixia frowned slightly and said in a clear voice, 30,000 spiritual stones. What great courage! She actually raised another 5,000 spiritual stones. Many people in the seats shook their heads and sighed. The people in the VIP seats were indeed big shots. They actually raised the price so high in one go. A displeased snort suddenly came from the private room opposite them. He called out again, 35,000 spiritual stones. I'm Master Yanhua. I hope the friend opposite us will give me some face and let me have the ultimate sword formation. As soon as this was said, many people in the seats were surprised. Even Huangfu Zixia, Kuya, and the others in the private room had a change in expression. It's actually Master Yanhua. The temptation of this ultimate sword formation is really strong. Even Master Yanhua has come to bid for it. Master Kuya frowned slightly. Huangfu Zixia's beautiful face was indeterminate and hesitant. Obviously, she was extremely afraid of Master Yanhua. After pondering for a while, she finally sighed and said, since it's Master Yanhua, then I'm Huangfu Zixia. I'll give Master Yanhua face and give up this bid. Chapter 638. The Furious Feng Xiang. Oh? So you're Zixia, little girl. I owe you a favor this time. Next time, if you need anything, feel free to come to the Arcane Guild to find me. I will do my best to help you. In the opposite room, Grandmaster Yanhua's tone became much gentler after he heard Huangfu Zixia's words. After all, Huangfu Zixia was a member of the imperial family, and she was also the disciple of Elder Qinyu, one of the 9 great elders of the Arcane Guild's headquarters. Her status was extremely noble. Grandmaster Yanhua wasn't a blindly arrogant person. Since Huangfu Zixia was giving him face, he naturally wouldn't neglect it. A smile immediately appeared on Huangfu Zixia's pretty face. She knew very well that although Grandmaster Yanhua's spiritual energy wasn't very strong, his father's position in the Arcane Guild was extremely high. He was the son of Elder Lu Li, who was ranked second among the 9 great elders in the guild. Although Huangfu Zixia's teacher, Grandmaster Qinyu, was one of the 9 elders, he was only ranked 8th. His status and strength were much lower than Elder Lu Li's. This was also the reason why Huangfu Zixia was afraid of Grandmaster Yanhua. After all, although the Imperial Capital's Arcane Guild couldn't compare to the Imperial Family and the Blue Dragon Hall, its influence was extremely great. Moreover, Arcanists were able to refine origin crystals and origin formations that some cultivators liked, so Arcanists had many powerful friends behind them. If the Arcane Guild were to gather those experts and friends, it would be enough to shake the power of the Imperial Family in the Imperial Capital. This was also why the Arcane Guild's status in the Imperial Capital was so high that even the Imperial Family did not dare to offend the Arcane Guild. From the whispers around him, Nguyen naturally knew about Master Yenhua's background. He didn't expect Master Yenhua to be the son of Elder Lioli, who was ranked second among the 9 great elders of the Arcane Guild. He was also a perfect grade 4 Arcanist and held an extremely high position in the Arcane Guild. The old man on the high platform was originally hoping that someone would bid and raise the price a little. Now that he saw that Grandmaster Yenhua had actually revealed his identity, the old man's eyes were immediately filled with disappointment. He knew that since Grandmaster Yenhua had revealed his identity, it meant that he was determined to obtain the greater infinite sword formation. As for the others present, it was unlikely that they would be able to compete with Grandmaster Yenhua. 35,000 spirit stones. Although I didn't reach my target, it's still not bad. The old man could only console himself like this. He was just about to finalize the ultimate sword formation when a clear and indifferent voice suddenly sounded out from above. 36,000 spirit stones. The moment this voice rang out, everyone on the viewing platform fell into silence. They were all too familiar with this voice. Wasn't this the young man who had raised the price with Feng Xiang at the beginning? Originally, Grandmaster Yenhua had revealed his identity in order to prevent others from competing with him. However, even though this young man knew this, he still continued to bid. It was obvious that he did not place Grandmaster Yenhua in his eyes. There were 3 people in the room across from him. All 3 of them were dressed in long gray robes, and there were 4 stars embroidered on their chests. Clearly, all 3 of them were rank 4 Arcana Masters. The person in the middle was about 40 years old. He had a protruding forehead and a white beard at his temples. When his eyes opened and closed, there was always a trace of light. This person was Grandmaster Yenhua. Beside Grandmaster Yenhua were 2 old men in their 70s. These 2 old men stood quietly behind Grandmaster Yenhua. They had the attitude of obeying orders at any time. They should be Grandmaster Yenhua's subordinates. Grandmaster Yenhua's hands clenched, and the armrests beside his hands were instantly crushed. His eyes narrowed, containing a bone-chilling coldness. Through the window of the room, he coldly stared at the room across from him. Liu, go and find out who is bidding with me in the room across from us. Grandmaster Yenhua coldly snorted. This subordinate will go and find out. The old man on Grandmaster Yenhua's left nodded respectfully, then silently left the room. Li Long, how many spirit stones do we have left? Grandmaster Yenhua said to the old man on his right. This time, we only brought 40,000 spirit stones, Li Long said in a low voice. I'd like to see who it is. He actually dares to challenge me. In the Imperial City, there aren't many people who dare to provoke me, Yenhua. As Grandmaster Yenhua spoke, a cruel smile appeared on his face. 40,000 spirit stones. I'll give you one last chance. Give up immediately. Otherwise, next year today will be the anniversary of your death. Grandmaster Yenhua's loud voice rang out once again. His tone faintly revealed a trace of hostility and coldness. Yuan, don't compete with Grandmaster Yenhua. His position in the Arcane Guild isn't low. If you bid with him, you'll lose more than you gain. In the room, Grandmaster Kuya hurriedly spoke up. There was a trace of deep worry on his face. He also didn't expect that Zhuowen would actually dare to compete with Grandmaster Yenhua. At the same time, he was also shocked by Zhuowen's wealth. He was actually able to bid 36,000 spirit stones. That's right. Grandmaster Yen Hua's background is very strong. Juan, you'll lose more than you gain by provoking him. Give up the bid. Grandmaster Kuraki also advised. As for Feng Xiang and Jing Yun, they stood to the side and sneered again and again. Their faces were filled with gloating expressions. As for Huangfu Zixia, her expression was still cold, but her gaze was on Zhuowen. The young man in front of her had really exceeded her expectations. He clearly didn't look like a genius from the imperial capital, but he actually had such a rich background. Moreover, the terrifying pressure he released at the entrance of the appraiser hall was still deeply etched in Huangfu Zixia's memory. In addition, Zhuan clearly knew about Grandmaster Yen Hua's background, yet he still dared to bid. Moreover, he didn't seem to be worried at all. In her eyes, Zhuan became even more mysterious. Grandmaster Kuya, Old Man Kuraki, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry. Zhuan smiled faintly. Soon after, he opened his mouth again and said in a clear voice, 41,000 spirit stones. In the opposite booth, Grandmaster Yen Hua smashed the chair he was sitting on. He said each word coldly, good job. He actually dares to snatch something from me, Yen Hua. Is he tired of living? Grandmaster Yen Hua, do you want me to help you get rid of this person? Li Long's sinister voice sounded from behind. No need. The appraiser hall doesn't allow fighting. We can't break the rules. Let's find out the identity of the person who made the bid first. Once he leaves the appraiser hall, the infinite sword formation will still fall into our hands. Of course, that fellow will pay the price in blood. At this point, Grandmaster Yen Hua's gaze became much colder and crueler. The surrounding atmosphere became extremely heavy. The old man on the high platform had a smile on his face like a blooming chrysanthemum. The gratitude he felt for Zhuan was like a torrential river. The infinite sword formation was auctioned off for 41,000 spirit stones. He had achieved his goal. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? The old man laughed mischievously. His gaze landed on Grandmaster Yen Hua's room and he raised his voice. He was now looking forward to Grandmaster Yen Hua raising the price again. However, after waiting for a long time, Grandmaster Yen Hua still remained silent. Everyone knew that Grandmaster Yen Hua probably only had 40,000 spirit stones on him. A trace of disappointment appeared on the old man's face. He waved his sleeves and the infinite sword formation in the sky instantly turned into rays of sword light. The old man had unknowingly dragged a huge metal box in his hand. Numerous long swords were all placed inside the metal box. Soon after, the metal box slowly closed. Since no one wants to bid, then the infinite sword formation will belong to this customer. The old man was full of smiles as he pointed at Zhuowen's room. You have offended Grandmaster Yen Hua this time. I'm afraid the consequences will be unimaginable. Grandmaster Kuraki and Grandmaster Kuya both sighed at the same time. Both of them were arcanists from the Arcane Guild. They were very clear about Grandmaster Yen Hua's background. Zhuan had offended someone he shouldn't have. However, Zhuan wasn't afraid at all. He definitely had to get the infinite sword formation. Because he had the infinite sword intent, he had the possibility of repairing the infinite sword formation. Once the infinite sword formation was repaired, it would be a grade 5 origin formation. Its power would probably become extremely terrifying. When that time came, Zhuan would be able to kill a 7-wheel ultimate emperor. This thing would be of great help to him in the battle of the 9 counties. He wouldn't give it up. As for Grandmaster Yen Hua, Zhuan didn't believe that this guy would privately use the Arcane Guild's power to deal with him. After all, Grandmaster Yen Hua didn't have the final say in the Arcane Guild. Moreover, Zhuan was a grade 4 arcanist. His talent and mental strength were both top-notch. Zhuan believed that as long as he registered as a grade 4 arcanist in the Arcane Guild, Grandmaster Yen Hua wouldn't dare to deal with him openly. As for secretly dealing with him, Zhuan wasn't afraid at all. What a reckless little bastard. You're dead for offending Grandmaster Yen Hua. Hee, no one can save you. Jing Yun, who was standing beside Feng Xiang, suddenly sneered at Zhuan. She stared at Zhuan as if she was looking at a dead man. Shut your dog mouth. If you continue to talk, don't blame me for being impolite. Jing Yun had insulted Zhuowen time and time again. This had already made Zhuowen extremely unhappy. At this moment, he turned his head and stared coldly at Jing Yun. Jing Yun was startled by Zhuowen's words. Although she was afraid of Zhuowen's strength, when she thought of Feng Xiang beside her, her courage rose. Who do you think you are? How dare you ask me to shut up? Do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you're stronger than me? Let me tell you, Brother Feng can crush you to death with one finger. Kneel down and apologize immediately. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to walk out of this room, Jing Yun said coldly. Crush me to death with one finger? Just based on the trash beside you? Slowly turning around, Zhuowen glanced coldly at Jing Yun. Soon after, his gaze landed on Feng Xiang beside her and he sneered without any trace of politeness. Feng Xiang, who originally had a smile on his face, suddenly froze. His eyes narrowed dangerously as he stared coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Who did you just call trash? I dare you to say it again." So you're saying that you admit that you're trash? Zhuowen said with a smirk. Chapter 639. Boom. A terrifying aura surged out. Feng Xiang's body moved without any wind, and his hair danced in the wind. His gaze was bone-chilling as he stared coldly at Zhuowen and said in a low voice, "Little bastard. Aren't you a little too arrogant? How dare you call me trash? I'll give you a chance now. Slap yourself, kneel down, and cripple your cultivation. Otherwise, I'll kill you." So you're the only one allowed to call me a bastard, but I'm not allowed to call you trash? Feng Xiang, you sure have a lot of face. I didn't provoke you at first, but you used me as a stepping stone to show off in front of Huangfu Zixia. Do you really think you're qualified? Turning around, Zhuowen's gaze was as calm as water. He looked at Feng Xiang as if he was looking at a clown. I'm a direct descendant of the Feng clan. Who do you think you are? You're just a lowly person from Muqin County. How dare you compare yourself to me? You should feel honored that I called you a bastard. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother with a lowly person like you. Calling you a bastard is your honor. Feng Xiang raised his head slightly and looked down at Zhuowen. His expression was full of arrogance. He was a direct descendant of the Feng clan. Although he wasn't ranked very high in the Feng clan, he was still considered a genius. There were very few people in the imperial capital who dared to provoke him. As for Zhuowen, judging from his relationship with Master Kuya and Master Karaki, Zhuowen should also be a genius from the imperial capital from Muqin County. Muqin County was ranked second last in the previous battle of the 9 counties. It was far inferior to the Feng clan, so Feng Xiang looked down on it. What a hopeless idiot. Your fart stinks. Zhuowen shook his head and said with a mocking expression. Seeing Zhuowen's unrestrained words, Jing Yun sneered. Huangfu Zixia shook her head and thought that Zhuowen was simply courting death. Feng Xiang was considered a genius with some fame in the Feng clan. After all, he was at the peak of the ultimate emperor stage. He was an expert who had the strength to enter the Azure Emperor ranking. Although Zhuowen's performance at the entrance of the Court of Treasures was impressive, the guards at the entrance were only at the initial stage of the ultimate emperor realm. The difference between them and Feng Xiang was too great. If Feng Xiang were to face off against those two burly men, he would be able to crush them. The expressions of Master Kuya and Master Kuraki changed slightly. At the same time, the bitterness on their faces intensified. The two of them didn't expect Zhuowen's ability to stir up trouble to become even more profound after not seeing him for a few years. First, he offended Master Yanhua. Now, he even angered Feng Xiang. Young Lord Feng. Kuya and Kuraki, Master Kuraki and Master Kuraki Kuya Feng Kuraki Lu Kuya and Kuraki Master. I've already given this bastard a chance. If it weren't for the two grandmasters' face, this Feng would have already crippled this little bastard. Unfortunately, this bastard doesn't know his place and has contradicted me many times. How can I tolerate that? Feng Xiang said coldly. Kuya and Kuraki were in a difficult position. They couldn't offend Feng Xiang, but they didn't want Zhuowen to be hurt either. Hence, they hesitated. Master Kuya, Old Man Kuraki, step aside. This trash can't hurt me. Zhuan shook his head and said indifferently. Crack. Feng Xiang clenched his fists so tightly that crackling sounds could be heard. Zhuo Wen's repeated words of trash had already infuriated him. Even if he had to violate the rules of the appraiser hall, he would still cripple this little bastard before him and make him suffer a fate worse than death. Feng Xiang shouted angrily and moved his feet. He passed by Kuya and Master Kuraki in an instant and rushed toward Zhuan. His right hand formed a palm and a terrifying power erupted, aiming for Zhuo Wen's forehead. This bastard is dead. With Brother Feng's help, he will be crippled even if he doesn't die. Jing Yun sneered. It was as if she could see the scene of Zhuo Wen being killed. Zhuo Wen narrowed his eyes. Even though Feng Xiang's cultivation had reached the peak of the ultimate emperor realm, Zhuo Wen didn't take him seriously at all. After all, he had once fought against an early-stage ultimate emperor realm cultivator. Even though he was at a disadvantage, he was at least undefeatable. Zhuo Wen only lightly punched upwards. Golden light sprinkled down like a curtain of rain, instantly exploding on Feng Xiang's palm. A terrifying power exploded, forming balls of qi waves between the two of them. Feng Xiang's face froze and his gaze froze. Then he felt a piercing pain in his right palm. A mouthful of blood spurted out. Feng Xiang's eyes were filled with terror. Like a withered leaf, he flew backward and smashed out of the box. His figure landed on the seats below in a sorry state. What's going on? Is there a fight in the room? The inspection treasure hall has a rule that no fighting is allowed inside. Who is so bold to ignore the rules? That must be Feng Xiang from the Feng family. He was thrown out of the room. Who is so arrogant to hit Feng Xiang? Everyone on the seats immediately noticed that the person who flew out of the room and landed miserably on the seats was the handsome young man, Feng Xiang. Then, everyone looked up and noticed a young man carrying a green coffin on his back slowly stepping out of the broken box. He stood high above and looked down at Feng Xiang, who was in a sorry state. You can't even take a single move from me. Tell me, are you trash or not? Zhuo Wen's indifferent voice slowly rang out. There was a hint of ridicule at the corner of his mouth. Feng Xiang stood up in a miserable manner at this moment. Fury attacked his heart when he heard Zhuo Wen's words. Immediately, he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His eyes were filled with shock and fury while his heart churned like a storm. How could this young man be so powerful? He was at the peak of the five-wheel ultimate emperor realm, but he was defeated in one blow. Feng Xiang's face burned as he felt everyone's gazes on him. Being defeated in one move in front of so many people, Feng Xiang's face was completely lost. What? Feng Xiang couldn't even take one blow from this person? How is that possible? Everyone on the seats was in an uproar. Feng Xiang was a well-known genius in the Feng family. He was at the peak of the five-wheel ultimate emperor realm, but he couldn't even take one blow from this unfamiliar young man. Wasn't this too terrifying? Inside the room, Master Kuya and Master Kuraki were stunned. They stared blankly at Zhuo Wen's back. They didn't expect Feng Xiang to be defeated so easily by Zhuan. Although they were confident in Zhuo Wen's talent, they only thought that Zhuo Wen was at the peak of the four-wheel ultimate emperor realm. After all, Zhuo Wen was only a half-step ultimate emperor realm cultivator before he participated in the battle for the Vitality Tower. It was impossible for his cultivation to improve so quickly in just 1 year. However, when they saw Feng Xiang in such a sorry state and Zhuo Wen standing straight, Master Kuya and Master Kuraki exchanged glances. They knew that they had completely underestimated Zhuo Wen's strength. What? Brother Feng lost? He lost in one blow? Jing Yun's cold smile froze. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Feng Xiang, who was like a god in her heart, had been defeated so thoroughly and cleanly. What an arrogant little bastard. You actually dared to fight in the appraiser hall. Today, this seat will teach you a lesson on behalf of the appraiser hall. A cold voice suddenly rang out from the room opposite them. A terrifying mental energy spread out, causing the room to shatter. 3 figures slowly floated in the air with the help of mental energy. The person in the lead was around 40 years old. He had a protruding forehead and a white beard at his temples. When he opened and closed his eyes, they would always reveal traces of light. This person was Master Yanhua. Grandmaster Yanhua's cold gaze slowly focused on Zhuo Wen, who was carrying the green coffin on his back. Just now, Li Hu had already secretly investigated. The person who had bid against him for the greater limitless sword formation was this brat in front of him. Therefore, when Zhuo Wen made his move, he immediately came out. The appraiser hall had a rule that prohibited private fights. Master Yanhua had originally planned to wait for Zhuo to leave the appraiser hall before making his move. But since Yun was the first to break the rule, Master Yanhua naturally didn't have any scruples. "You're Master Yanhua? You speak with a dignified name, but your actual goal should be to snatch the greater infinity sword formation, right?" Zhuowen's gaze shifted as he stared at Master Yanhua. Master Yanhua's gaze gradually turned gloomy. Zhuowen's words weren't polite at all, causing him to feel extremely displeased. With his status, when had he ever received such an attitude? The appraiser hall doesn't allow private fights. You clearly know that you're breaking the rules. If I don't capture you, how can I convince everyone? As for the greater infinity sword formation in your hands, that thing isn't something a bastard like you can possess, Master Yanhua said indifferently. Then a bastard like you is qualified to possess it? Zhuan coldly replied. What did you say? You actually dare to call me a bastard? Are you courting death? Master Yanhua's face twitched. The mental energy within his body uncontrollably surged out, forming a mental energy sea around him. As expected of Master Yanhua. His mental energy is actually so powerful. I'm afraid that he'll soon break through to become a 5th-grade Arcana Master. Sensing the terrifying mental energy around Master Yanhua, the expressions of many people in the surroundings changed. Their gazes towards Master Yanhua were filled with reverence. Below the stage, Feng Xiang slowly stood up. His gaze was filled with hatred as he loudly said, Master Yanhua, the one who bid against you for the greater infinity sword formation is this bastard. He doesn't even put you in his eyes. I originally wanted to persuade him to give up, but this bastard ambushed me. This kid is arrogant and shameless to the extreme. You can't let him off. If we're talking about shamelessness, then Feng Xiang, you're the most shameless. Inverting right and wrong, can your face be any thicker? Zhuan coldly said. Don't quibble. You really did ambush Feng Xiang, causing him to lose. Moreover, you disregarded the appraiser hall's rules. A shameless and shameless bastard like you must be eliminated today. Grandmaster Yanhua's sinister voice rang out. Shortly after, the mental energy around him started to boil. Black flames started to rise and revolved around Grandmaster Yanhua. In an instant, the temperature of the entire seating area became extremely terrifying. Many weaker warriors quickly retreated. Master Yanhua, this is the appraiser hall, not your arcane guild. If you want to fight, you'd better leave the appraiser hall first. Otherwise, don't blame this old man for being impolite. Chapter 640. Repairing the greater infinity sword formation. The voice caused Master Yanhua, who was about to make a move, to freeze. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the auctioneer on the stage. Elder Zhou, are you trying to stop me? I'm not trying to stop you, but this is the appraisal hall. Master Yanhua should know that private fights are not allowed here, so I'm just following the rules of the appraisal hall. Elder Zhou slowly raised his head with a calm gaze. At the same time, a terrifying aura burst out from his body. Instantly, the air on the 4th floor froze. What a terrifying aura. This auctioneer is not simple. Yun narrowed his eyes and focused on Elder Zhou. The aura this old man emitted was much stronger than Elder Shi from the Grand Family. His cultivation was definitely above the ultimate 7-wheel Emperor realm. Grandmaster Yanhua's face was extremely gloomy. Old Man Zhou was one of the higher-ups of the appraiser hall and was slightly stronger than him. If Grandmaster Yanhua really made a move on Zhuo Wen in front of this old man, Grandmaster Yanhua would probably suffer. This little bastard made a move on Feng Xiang. I think Elder Zhou has always been impartial. This little bastard should be punished properly. Master Yanhua snorted coldly and did not make a move in the end. His cold gaze focused on Juan as he spoke sinisterly. This is the first time this little brother has come to the appraisal hall. As the saying goes, the ignorant are fearless. I'll let him off this time, but there won't be a next time. Elder Zhou glanced at Juan. Hearing this, Master Yenhua's face darkened. Now, even an idiot could see that Master Yenhua was trying to save Zhuowen's life. Juan narrowed his eyes. This Elder Zhou was obviously biased towards him. However, when he thought about how Elder Zhou had helped to bid for the items in the auction and how Zhuowen had spent a large sum of money to buy the Greater Infinity Sword formation, Zhuowen felt relieved. What? Does Master Yenhua still want to cause trouble? Although our appraisal hall is not comparable to the Arcane Guild, it's not enough for you to do whatever you want in our appraisal hall. Elder Zhou's gaze became sharper and his aura became more terrifying. It was like a 10,000 zhang long mountain that suddenly covered the surrounding space, causing Master Yenhua's face to turn even darker. Elder Zhou, you must be joking. Since Elder Zhou has stepped forward, Yenhua, I will naturally give you face. We won't cause a ruckus in the appraisal hall. However, if this little bastard leaves the appraisal hall, Elder Zhou, please don't stop us. Grandmaster Yenhua's words were filled with deep meaning, causing Zhuowen's eyes to narrow. This Grandmaster Yenhua actually dared to threaten him in such a blatant manner. Clearly, this fellow was planning to rob the appraiser hall by force. Of course. The appraiser hall is only in charge of the internal affairs of the appraiser hall. As for matters outside the appraiser hall, this old man naturally won't meddle in other people's business, Elder Zhou said calmly. If that's the case, that's good. Grandmaster Yenhua let out a sigh of relief. His gaze gathered on Jun as he coldly said, Little bastard. I will be waiting for you outside the appraiser hall. Come out if you have the guts. Don't be a coward. Zhuan sneered and said, Who do you think you are? Do you think I'll go out just because you want me to? Grandmaster Yenhua's expression froze as the veins on his forehead bulged. This little bastard before him was getting more and more arrogant. He actually dared to speak in such a manner in front of him. He must be tired of living. If you have the guts, then stay inside for the rest of your life. Grandmaster Yenhua coldly snorted before leaving the appraisal hall with Li Hu and Li Long. As for Feng Xiang, he also glared at Zhuan before leaving with his tail between his legs. It was too embarrassing just now. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, he was defeated by a nameless Zhuan in one move. How could he still have the face to stay here? Senior, thank you for your help this time. Zhuan arrived in front of Elder Zhou and cupped his hands respectfully. No need to thank me. This old man is only protecting the interests of the customer. Since you have won the Greater Infinity Sword formation, this old man will not let anything happen to you before you obtain it. Take it. This is the Greater Infinity Sword formation. Speaking until here, Elder Zhou waved his sleeve and a metal box that was half a man's height appeared beside Zhuowen's feet. The heavy weight actually caused a crack to appear on the ground. Looking at the metal box, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. With a wave of his right hand, the metal box was instantly stored in his spiritual ring. Young friend, you must be an Arcana master as well. If you refine this Greater Infinity Sword formation, your strength will definitely increase by a level. Young friend, you can stay in the appraisal hall for a few more days. You can leave after you refine this Greater Infinity Sword formation. Old man Zhou spoke in a meaningful tone before he left the place. The other people seated on the stage also scattered. After the auction ended, there was naturally no reason for them to remain here. However, the people on the stage were not in a hurry to leave the appraisal hall. Instead, they gathered at the entrance of the appraisal hall. They remembered that Grandmaster Yenhua was waiting for Zhuowen at the entrance of the appraisal hall. They wanted to see if Zhuowen would dare to leave the appraisal hall with Grandmaster Yenhua around. At this moment, there were many people gathered at the entrance of the appraisal hall. In the middle of these people, there were 4 figures quietly waiting at the entrance. These 4 people were Grandmaster Yenhua, and Feng Xiang. Grandmaster Yenhua. That kid is not simple. When he leaves the appraisal hall, you must not be careless. Feng Xiang respectfully said to Grandmaster Yenhua. Feng Xiang had suffered at the hands of Zhuan before. He knew that Zhuan was not weak. If he was careless, he might be able to escape. Even if that little bastard is not simple, this time I will make him bleed and live a life worse than death. Thinking about Zhuowen's rude words, Grandmaster Yanhua's anger surged. He wished that he could tear apart Zhuowen's bones and pull out his tendons. Hearing this, Feng Xiang's eyes revealed a trace of hatred. He knew that with Grandmaster Yanhua and the others around, once Zhuowen stepped out of the appraisal hall, he would definitely die. In the crowd, Huangfu Zixia and Jing Yun silently stood together. Their gazes were also focused on Feng Xiang, Grandmaster Yanhua, and the others. That Zhuowen is dead meat. Although his strength is not bad, he is brainless. He even dared to offend Grandmaster Yanhua. When he comes out, I wonder how he will die. Jing Yun said with a cold smile. Huangfu Zixia's beautiful eyes flickered as she shook her head. Clearly, she did not believe that Zhuowen could escape from Grandmaster Yanhua and the others after leaving the appraisal hall. Inside the appraisal hall, Elder Zhou arranged a quiet room for Zhuowen. On the other hand, Kuya and Song Mu left the appraisal hall under Zhuowen's persuasion. Zhuowen knew that Grandmaster Yanhua's strength was stronger than Song Mu and Kuya. Even if the two of them stayed by his side, they would not be of any help. Instead, they would offend Grandmaster Yanhua because of him. The gains did not make up for the losses. As for Lu, she also left the appraisal hall and returned to the intoxicated spring pavilion under Zhuowen's orders. Zhuowen quietly sat cross-legged on the futon in the room. With a wave of his right hand, a large metal box appeared before him. Shortly after, the metal box opened. Rays of cold light flickered as a huge sword array revolved around Zhuowen's body. It was the Greater Infinity Sword Array. The moment the Greater Infinity Sword Array appeared, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. With a flick of his finger, the Infinity Sword aura in his spiritual ring turned into a stream of light and appeared before him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Sword cries resounded. The moment the Infinity Sword Array appeared, the originally quiet Greater Infinity Sword Array actually trembled as if it was excited and longing for it. The Infinity Sword aura is indeed an incomplete small sword array of the Greater Infinity Sword Array. Sensing the abnormality of the Greater Infinity Sword Array, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He was even more certain that the Infinity Sword aura was an incomplete small sword array of the Greater Infinity Sword Array. Thinking about how he could completely restore the Greater Infinity Sword Array, Zhuowen was abnormally excited. This was a true 5th grade origin array. Its might was absolutely beyond his expectations. Let's try to merge the Infinity Sword aura into the Greater Infinity Sword Array first. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Zhuowen began to control the Infinity Sword aura in his hand and slowly approached the damaged part of the Greater Infinity Sword Array. What surprised Zhuowen was that the Greater Infinity Sword Array did not resist at all. The damaged part did not obstruct the entry of the Infinity Sword aura at all. The two fused together very well. Moreover, the degree of compatibility was constantly increasing as time passed. At this speed, it should be able to completely fuse together in 3 days. At that time, the Greater Infinity Sword Array will be completely restored and become a complete 5th grade origin array. Looking at the Greater Infinity Sword Array and the Infinity Sword aura that were slowly fusing together, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with joy. At the same time, his heart was filled with joy. He did not expect that he, Zhuowen, would actually possess a 5th grade origin array. Although his mental strength was only at the 4th grade advanced realm and could not unleash the full power of the 5th grade origin array, even if it was only a portion of its power, the Greater Infinity Sword Array was still superior to many 4th grade origin arrays. Its power was comparable to an ordinary heaven-rank soul treasure. If Zhuowen's mental strength reached the 5th grade, he would be able to unleash the full power of the Greater Infinity Sword Array. At that time, the Greater Infinity Sword Array would be truly terrifying. There are still 3 days. I can refine this firebird's plume feather first. With a flick of his finger, a blazing red plume feather suddenly appeared in Zhuowen's palm. This plume feather was the firebird's plume feather that Tun had bid for. Because the nirvana of the great sun reacted to the firebird's plume feather, Yuan gritted his teeth and bid for it. Boom! When the firebird's plume feather laid quietly in his palm, all the acupuncture points in Zhuowen's body trembled involuntarily. Following that, a golden torrent gushed out from the acupuncture points in his body. After this golden torrent appeared outside of Zhuowen's body, it actually turned into a dazzling golden flame. The moment the golden flame appeared, the temperature of the entire room skyrocketed by several times. Traces of cracks even appeared on the ground. Chapter 641. Phoenix Blood Essence Boom. The firebird feather finally disintegrated, leaving behind a drop of golden liquid. However, the moment this drop of golden liquid appeared, an extremely terrifying pressure was released from the liquid without any warning. A clear cry rang out. Following that, Yuan was shocked to discover that above the liquid, a shadow that was born from fire spread its wings and flew towards the sky. The divine beast phoenix, Nirvana Rebirth. This shadow was actually a phoenix. The terrifying pressure from its body poured down. Yuan couldn't help but let out a groan as he slowly retreated a dozen steps. Instead of being shocked, his eyes were filled with joy. It is said that the firebird possesses the phoenix bloodline of the ancient divine beast. Could this drop of golden liquid be the phoenix blood? Looking at the golden liquid that was quietly floating in the air, Zhuowen's smile widened. No wonder the nirvana of the great sun in his body had such a huge reaction. It turned out that this firebird feather actually contained a drop of phoenix blood essence. Although it was only a drop, the phoenix was an ancient divine beast. It was an existence that surpassed all living creatures. Even within the dragon clan, only the top dragon clan could be compared to the phoenix. It was an existence that truly stood at the peak. One could imagine how rare a drop of phoenix blood essence was. Taking a deep breath, Yuan forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart. With a stroke of his right hand, he carefully stored the drop of phoenix blood essence into his spirit ring. The phoenix blood essence should be extremely beneficial to Zhuowen's nirvana of the great sun. However, he also knew that it wasn't easy to absorb this drop of phoenix blood essence. This place was the appraisal hall, not a safe place. Yuan didn't plan to absorb the phoenix blood essence here. Furthermore, Yuan didn't know if absorbing the phoenix blood essence would have any side effects. Therefore, Yuan wouldn't do it so easily. It would be great if Xiaohei woke up now. With that fellow's knowledge, he should know how to use this drop of phoenix blood essence. At this moment, Yuan missed the days when Xiaohei was still around. Xiaohei's knowledge was much more than his. She would definitely know how to use this drop of phoenix blood essence. Let's put the phoenix blood essence aside for now. There are still more than 2 days left. I can use the spirit stones to increase my mental strength. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen's gaze fell on the spirit stones in the spirit ring. Because he had bought the firebird plume feather and the greater infinite sword formation, Yuan only had about 8,000 spirit stones left. However, they were all mid-grade spirit stones, and the spirit chi they contained was much denser than low-grade spirit stones. Spiritual chi was extremely beneficial to the growth of mental strength. 8,000 medium spiritual stones were enough to allow Zhuowen's mental strength to reach the level of complete grade 4. Once Zhuowen's mental power reaches the 4th grade great perfection, coupled with the ultimate sword formation, even if the outside world's master Yanhua was waiting for him, Yuan would not be afraid. Thinking of this, Yuan waved his right hand. Suddenly, pieces of sparkling and translucent spirit stones piled up in front of him, almost forming a small mountain. A fierce spirit chi rushed towards him. Boom! With a thought, the mental strength in Zhuowen's Naiwen Palace swept out like a hurricane, enveloping all the spirit stones in front of him. Waves of dense spirit chi followed this mental strength and endlessly drilled into the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Following the influx of spirit energy, Zhuowen could clearly feel the mental energy contained in his Naiwen Palace. Just like a healthy baby, it was continuously growing stronger and more solid. Time gradually passed. Outside the entrance of the inspection treasure hall, Master Yanhua, Feng Xiang, and the other 3 people were still waiting. However, The four of them did not look too good. Almost 3 days had passed, but Juan still had not come out. "Looks like this little bastard is afraid of you, Master Yanhua. It has almost been 3 days, but this kid still hasn't come out. I'm afraid he doesn't plan to come out." Feng Xiang's eyebrows furrowed slightly. His expression was somewhat irritated. The reason why he had followed behind Grandmaster Yanhua was because he wanted to see Zhuowen get beaten up by Grandmaster Yanhua. If Zhuowen did not come out, wouldn't his waiting be in vain? "Didn't you say that this kid is a genius from Muqing County? Since he came to the imperial capital this time, he probably wants to participate in the upcoming War of the 9 Counties. There is less than a month left until the War of the 9 Counties. If this kid doesn't want to miss it, he will definitely come out within a month. At that time, I will have the opportunity to capture him." After saying this, the corners of Master Yanhua's mouth curled up. His gaze became gloomy and cruel. He was very patient and could continue waiting. However, Zhuowen did not have that much time. That's true. The War of the 9 Counties is about to begin. This kid will not give up this opportunity. He will definitely come out within a month. Feng Xiang nodded in agreement. "Senior Huangfu, I'm afraid that Zhuowen is afraid. Almost 3 days have passed. This kid simply doesn't have the guts to face Grandmaster Yanhua and the others." Jing Yun stood beside Huangfu Zixia, and the corners of her mouth curled into a sneer as she spoke. "3 level 4 Arcana Masters and Feng Xiang. That Zhuowen won't have the slightest chance of escaping from such a lineup. It's reasonable that he doesn't come out." Huangfu Zixia nodded. Her voice was extremely cold from beginning to end. Boom. In a room in the inspection hall, a terrifying mind energy overflowed, causing the surrounding air to freeze. This mind energy had the momentum to soar into the sky. It was vast and unrestrained, and it was as vast as an abyss. When this terrifying mind energy reached a critical point, a muffled sound suddenly burst out. Zhuowen's aura reached its peak. The mind energy around him converged like a tide, and everything returned to normal. At the same time, the small mountain of spiritual stones piled in front of Zhuowen turned into ordinary stones. Inch by inch, they crumbled into fine powder. Just like that, 8,000 medium spiritual stones turned into useless fine powder. My complete 4th grade mind energy has finally reached it. At this moment, Zhuowen slowly stood up. His eyes were as dazzling as the blazing sun. The spiritual energy of 8,000 medium spiritual stones had finally pushed his mind energy to the complete 4th grade. This time, Zhuowen could rely on the spiritual energy of the medium spiritual stones to break through to the complete 4th grade in one fell swoop. The main reason was that his realm had already reached the complete 4th grade, but his mind energy had yet to reach the complete 4th grade. Zhuowen's mind energy had reached the complete 4th grade for some time. Moreover, he cultivated the Myriad Evolution Scripture, a top-grade secret spirit skill. The cultivation speed of his mind energy was much faster than that of ordinary Arcana Masters. It was not surprising that his realm had reached the complete 4th grade long ago. Now, with the help of the medium spiritual stones, it was reasonable for his mind energy to reach the complete 4th grade. Ding, ding, ding. The crisp sound of swords suddenly rang out. The fusion of the ultimate sword formation and the ultimate sword aura, which were suspended in midair, had finally reached the final moment. When the sound of the swords reached the highest pitch, the ultimate sword formation and the ultimate sword aura finally merged completely. A shocking aura suddenly burst out. Boom! The entire room shook a few times, and Zhuowen retreated continuously under this aura. In the end, he used the nirvana of the Great Sun to barely stabilize his body. As expected of a 5th grade origin formation. Just this aura alone is enough to make me retreat. Looking at the complete ultimate sword formation in front of him, Zhuowen's eyes were full of excitement. This ultimate sword formation was extremely extraordinary. It was probably a powerful existence among the 5th grade origin formations. A man's wealth is his own ruin. This complete ultimate sword formation cannot be easily shown to others. Looking at the extremely extraordinary ultimate sword formation in front of him, Zhuowen's eyes flickered. If the ultimate sword formation was incomplete, it would be useless to a 5th grade arcana master. It would only be of great help to a 4th grade arcana master. If people were to know that Zhuo Wen possessed the complete greater infinity sword array, perhaps the rank 5 arcanists of the arcane guild would become restless. There was no guarantee that they wouldn't try to steal it from him. In the future, I will use the incomplete ultimate sword formation. Unless it is absolutely necessary, I will not use the complete ultimate sword formation. With a wave of his right hand, the ultimate sword formation in front of Zhuan immediately obediently came to Zhuan. With Zhuan as the center, it slowly rotated with a cold light. At the same time, Zhuan's right hand formed a claw and fiercely grabbed the ultimate sword aura. Instantly, the sound of a sword rang out, and the ultimate sword aura was caught by Zhuan. The ultimate sword formation once again became incomplete, and its aura was much weaker than before. Since the limitless sword aura had already perfectly merged with the greater limitless sword formation, if Zhuan wanted to use the limitless sword aura to form the greater limitless sword formation, it wouldn't be as troublesome as today. It would take a long time to form the complete greater limitless sword formation in an instant. Collect! With a grab of his right hand, the long swords in the ultimate sword formation were all collected into Zhuowen's spiritual ring like flowing light. When he was refining the ultimate sword formation, Zhuowen naturally discovered that there were 5 great sword moves in the ultimate sword formation. Moreover, the power of these 5 great sword moves was even more terrifying than the sword moves in the ultimate sword aura. The 5 great sword moves were the blood-weeping style, the yin-yang style, the sky-breaking style, the thousand-sword style, and the flowing sword style. Each move was more terrifying than the previous one. Of course, it was also more difficult to master each move. Now that Zhuan had just obtained the ultimate sword formation, it was naturally impossible for him to master these 5 great sword moves. He only knew how to use them crudely. However, even with the crudely used method, the power he could unleash was still very terrifying. It should be time to leave the appraisal pavilion. I wonder if Grandmaster Yanhua and the others are still waiting outside. After putting away the ultimate sword formation, Nguyen thought of the ruthless words that Grandmaster Yanhua had said 3 days ago. His eyes narrowed as a cold light flashed in them. If it was 3 days ago, Nguyen might have been afraid of Grandmaster Yanhua. But now, Zhuowen's mental energy had broken through to the rank 4 great perfection and he had mastered the ultimate sword formation. Even if he could not defeat Grandmaster Yanhua, it was more than enough for him to escape from Grandmaster Yanhua and the other 2. Thinking of this, Zhuan took a step forward and walked towards the entrance of the appraisal pavilion. At this moment, there were still many people gathered at the entrance. Grandmaster Yanhua, Feng Xiang, and the other 3 stood in the middle of the entrance. Their eyes were fixed on the entrance of the appraisal pavilion. The surrounding people were also looking at the entrance. Dang dang dang. Chapter 642. Severed arm, following which, a slender young man carrying a green coffin appeared before everyone's eyes. This young man was Zhuan. This person has guts. He knows that Master Yanhua is waiting at the entrance, yet he still dares to come out. He must be tired of living. Maybe he has some tricks up his sleeve and thinks that he can escape from Master Yanhua. That's why he's so confident. When Zhuan finally arrived at the entrance of the Inspection Treasure Pavilion, the surrounding crowd burst into an uproar. Many people even looked at Zhuan as if they were looking at a fool. This person knows that there are tigers in the mountain, yet he still dares to go there. They don't know if they should call him courageous or stupid. Grandmaster Yanhua narrowed his eyes and stared at Zhuan. A cruel smile appeared on his face as he said, "I didn't expect you to be so courageous. You actually dared to come out. I can't help but admire your courage. Jun, I'll give you a chance to live. Hand over your spiritual ring, sever your arms, cripple your cultivation, and kneel before me. Perhaps I'll plead with Master Yanhua to spare your worthless life." Feng Xiang stared at Zhuan with hatred. What an idiot. Cripple your cultivation and sever your own arms. I'm afraid that only an idiot like you can think of such a stupid method. Do you really think that you can take revenge just because you're related to Master Yanhua? What a laughable idiot. Zhuan glanced at Feng Xiang as if he was looking at a clown. He shook his head and ignored Feng Xiang. Instead, he looked at Master Yanhua and the other two who were not far away. This was especially true for Master Yanhua. Although Master Yanhua's mental strength was the same as his, the black flames that he released last time were extremely terrifying. Master Yanhua had used some kind of secret technique to turn his mental strength into black flames. In Zhuowen's opinion, Grandmaster Pyrotechnic was much more difficult to deal with than an ordinary Grade 4 Great Perfection Arcana Master. Therefore, even Zhuowen would not be careless. Zhuowen's disregard immediately caused Feng Xiang's expression to turn ugly as he flew into a rage. However, he did not dare to step forward and teach Zhuowen a lesson. After experiencing Zhuowen's strength, he clearly understood that he was no match for Zhuowen and would only be beaten up if he stepped forward. Grandmaster Yanhua glanced at Feng Xiang and snorted coldly at Zhuowen. I gave you a chance in the appraiser hall. Unfortunately, you didn't cherish it. So, you won't have the chance to live today. You didn't give me the opportunity. I created it myself. Don't put yourself on a pedestal, as if everything is in your hands. You don't know that in my eyes, you are no different from a monkey performing on the street. Zhuowen sneered. I think you are courting death. Li Long, Li Hu, kill this arrogant brat on the spot and take the spiritual ring from this little bastard. Grandmaster Yanhua's expression was gloomy as he snorted coldly. Li Long and Li Hu both responded. Instantly, two terrifying mental energies burst out from their bodies. At the same time, the two of them took out a roulette at the same time. Grade 4 Origin Array, Polar Domain. Grade 4 Origin Array, Lava Domain. The two of them shouted at the same time. Instantly, the two roulette in their hands flew out. One of the roulette exploded and countless icy chi gushed out, turning into a frost domain that was dozens of feet wide. The other roulette exploded and countless hot magma gushed out, spreading dozens of feet wide. The polar domain enveloped Zhuowen from above, while the lava domain corroded the soles of Zhuowen's feet from below. They were actually planning to seal Zhuowen in between the two domains. The moment the extreme cold and extreme heat energy came into contact, a terrifying explosive energy was formed. Without a doubt, if Zhuowen was completely trapped in these two domains, he would definitely die. Boom! In an instant, the two domains closed and Zhuowen's figure was completely engulfed by the two domains, disappearing from sight. He, arrogant little bastard, do you really think that you are invincible? You deserve to die now. Feng Xiang's eyes revealed a trace of satisfaction as he grinned. Grandmaster Yanhua narrowed his eyes. He could faintly feel that Zhuowen was not that simple. However, he did not expect that he would be trapped by Li Long and Li Hu's origin array. The polar domain and the lava domain were both grade 4 origin arrays. The combination of the two could unleash an extremely terrifying power. Once one was trapped within it, only death awaited them. Even Grandmaster Yanhua would have to put in a lot of effort to escape from it if he was trapped within it. The instant Zhuowen's figure was engulfed, the surrounding people revealed a disappointed expression. They originally thought that the young man who dared to talk back to Grandmaster Yanhua would be a powerful expert. They did not expect him to be so useless. Overestimating himself. In the crowd, Jing Yun narrowed her eyes and sneered. On the other hand, Huangfu Zixia's beautiful face was still indifferent. Even when Zhuowen was trapped in the polar domain and lava domain, she was still not moved in the slightest. She only thought that Zhuowen was a boorish fellow who did not know when to stop. He is indeed a piece of trash. He actually dared to defy Grandmaster Yanhua's orders. He deserves to die. Li Long and Li Hu looked at each other as they sneered. However, a clear voice rang out, causing the sneers on Li Long and Li Hu's faces to gradually freeze. Don't you find it laughable to play with fire and ice in front of me? Boom! The moment these words left his mouth, the polar domain and the lava domain, which were originally showing signs of merging, suddenly burst apart. A figure slowly walked out. What caused everyone to be shocked was that wherever this person passed, the polar domain and the lava domain seemed to kneel on the ground as though they were worshipping their king. When Li Long and Li Hu saw this scene, their brows slightly furrowed. However, their hearts were filled with shock. They tried their best to activate their respective yuan arrays, but there was no reaction at all. You want to withdraw these 2 yuan arrays? Since you want them, I'll give them to you. Zhuan sneered as he waved his hands. Instantly, the 2 domains that were wrapped in a terrifying might suddenly flew towards Li Long and Li Hu. The speed was so fast that even the 2 of them were caught off guard. Boom! A huge explosion accompanied by shrill screams rang out. The terrifying explosion formed by the combination of the 2 domains of ice and fire directly engulfed Li Long and Li Hu. In the time of 2 breaths, the screams weakened. In the end, there was no sign of life. Li Long and Li Hu had died under the explosion. Gasps could be heard from the surroundings. The young man in front of them had hidden his strength well. His strength was actually so terrifying. From the time Zhuan escaped to the death of Li Long and Li Hu, it was only a blink of an eye. It was so fast that even Master Yanhua couldn't react in time. Then they were killed by Zhuan just like that. Feng Xiang's face was a little stiff. Although Li Long and Li Hu were only grade 4 lower-tier arcanists and were much weaker than Master Yanhua, Feng Xiang might not be a match for the 2 of them when they joined forces. However, Zhuan had killed the 2 of them so easily. Feng Xiang faintly felt a little uneasy in his heart. You killed them? Master Yanhua's pupils shrank as he said word by word in a suppressed voice. Oh, are your dog eyes blind? Did you turn a blind eye to the scene just now? Zhuan grinned and revealed a cold smile. How dare you kill the people of my arcane guild? Must I? Master Yanhua flew into a rage. Li Long and Li Hu were his right-hand men and were also his confidants. They were completely loyal to him. Now that they were killed by Zhuan, how could Master Yanhua not be furious? Die? The one who died wasn't me, but you. Zhuan said sarcastically. Boom! Grandmaster Yanhua let out a low roar. His terrifying mental energy spread out and turned into strange black flames in the surroundings. Countless black flames circled around and the surrounding temperature soared to the extreme. This caused the surrounding crowd to involuntarily retreat. You will pay the price for what you've done. With a low roar, Master Yanhua's right hand formed into a claw and pressed down on the void. The countless black flames around him condensed into a huge black flame claw and crushed down on Zhuan. Zhuan snorted coldly. With a shake of his sleeve, a dazzling golden light filled the surface of his body. Zhuan bent down and took a step forward. His right fist, which was ready to strike, punched out and the golden light exploded. Nirvana of the great sun, Nirvana. With a low roar, the golden light from his right fist soared into the sky, almost piercing through the sky. A terrifying golden giant that was close to 1,000 feet tall suddenly stepped out from the depths of the void. It stepped on the golden flames and slammed its huge palm against the black flame claw. Boom, 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 boom. The golden light and the black flame clashed and burst out layers of air waves, causing the surrounding space to collapse inch by inch. A terrifying explosion sounded and the golden light and black flame disappeared into the void at the same time. This kid is terrifying. He actually managed to block Master Yanhua's black flame claw. Master Yanhua used a secret technique to transform his mental strength into black flames. Its might is even above ordinary earth flames. Even an early-stage Ultimate Emperor Realm Cultivator might not be able to block it. After Grandmaster Yanhua's black flame claw was broken, the surrounding uproar became even noisier. Everyone knew that the reason why this young man, who was carrying a green coffin, dared to act so arrogantly in the inspection treasure hall and did not give Grandmaster Yanhua any face was not because he was arrogant. Instead, it was because he had the confidence to do so. Master Yanhua's face was extremely gloomy, but his heart was also in turmoil. Even he didn't expect Zhuan to be able to break his black flame claw. Zhuan slowly walked over. With a clench of his right hand, a bone spear that was 3 feet long appeared in his palm. Following that, Zhuan took a step forward and charged towards Master Yanhua without slowing down. The contempt in Master Yanhua's eyes disappeared. This Zhuan was enough for him to take him seriously. Therefore, when Zhuan charged over, he immediately controlled the black flame around him and formed a thick and terrifying wall of fire around him. In an instant, Zhuowen was like a fluttering butterfly as he flew over. When Zhuowen was only 5 meters away from Grandmaster Yanhua, the gazes of the surrounding people were gathered at this place. They wanted to see exactly what would happen when the two of them collided. Idiot! A mocking voice slowly sounded in Master Yanhua's ears. Following that, Zhuowen turned his spear around in disbelief and charged towards Feng Xiang. Pucci! You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.